We are live on a Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video streaming on our YouTube channel. What is good, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there, a action-packed show for you today. I got a lot of things that are on my mind. I got a big rundown. I hope I can get to it all. I don't know that I'll have enough time in the 4 hours. The operative word is time. I don't have enough time. But we will do our best to get all the topics in, and including hearing from you guys out there. Here's the way you can connect with me. If you're listening on the free mobile app, you can DM us through the app on your phone. You can always text the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Yesterday, we went on the show early. We were on from 12 to 2 yesterday, and we jumped back on after the Sixers game. We had a lot of action on the phones earlier in the show, so I'll throw out the phone number again, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. A lot to kind of dive in on today, and I'm very interested in your reaction, as I always am. I get a lot of tweets from you guys reacting to some of the things that we say here on the Sports Bash. Today, I want to start with this. Kyler Murray was awful last night. And I'm not going to come on here and see, that's the whole thing. You got to be patient with these guys. Kyler Murray was awful. There's no two ways around it. He was atrocious last night. But let's be honest with ourselves here. Here's a stat that I found. Now, if you were listening last night to Jeff Kerr and I asked Jeff Kerr this question. The Eagles have this quarterback situation. And I say it's a situation because, quite frankly, it is. There's no guarantee that Jalen Hurts is going to be the starting quarterback when they open the season next year. No one can sit here and say definitively that Jalen Hurts is definitively the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles next year. You might say, I'm okay with him being the starting quarterback. You might say, I want him gone, but nobody knows definitively if he will be the starting quarterback. So yesterday I said to Kerr, what about Mitch Trubisky? He is a free agent. He is a former number 2 overall pick in the draft. He is perceived to be a bust. And I'm not arguing whether he's a bust or not. But here was a guy who got, quite frankly, overdrafted. He should have never been the number 2 pick in that draft. He went to a team that did not have a lot of offensive talent. He ended up with a first-year head coach in Matt Nagy. Mitch Trubisky and Matt Nagy have a better record together as a quarterback head coach combination. They are 29-21. Trubisky and Nagy. Nagy fired, Trubisky already released and over in Buffalo on his second team already. They have a better record as a head coach quarterback combination than Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury do together. Murray and Kingsbury aren't even a 500 tandem. They are 22, 23, and 1. We live in a world, people, where everybody wants what's behind door number 2. And as soon as they see what's behind door number 2, they're ready to open door number 3. We saw it already here. Everybody wanted Jim Schwartz fired. Not me, you. And now you want Jonathan Gannon to go. You were ready to open door number 2, and now you're ready to see what's behind door number 3. Here's the point. When you watch a game, you see every single week and every single round as the teams get eliminated and it gets paired off and paired off and paired off. There are so few elites. That's why they're called the 1%ers. All 32 teams are not finding an elite quarterback. It's not happening. Where all 32 teams at the same time are going to have an elite quarterback. There are going to be teams that simply will continue to search and search and search and search, and they're not going to find one. Kyler Murray's a very good quarterback. But unfortunately, it's like the NBA. If you don't have LeBron, if you don't have Durant, if you don't have Steph Curry, if you don't have one of the elite players, you're not winning. It's very similar in football. If you can't find the elite quarterback, chances are it's going to be very tough for you to win. It's easier in football to win without an elite quarterback than it is in basketball to win without an elite player. But man, we are always so quick to move on. You know, there was a time when we were all growing up. I'm 44. I'll be 45 in a week or so. So people in my age bracket, I don't know, people in my age bracket have become really irrational people. It's a sad society that my age bracket has grown into. But hopefully you guys remember when we were rational. There was a time when people in my age bracket actually were rational. And it was like, hey, a wide receiver gets drafted, you have to wait 3 years. There was no anticipation that a rookie wide receiver was going to come in the league and just all of a sudden turn into Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. No, you waited 3 years to really judge that guy. There was an anticipation when you drafted a quarterback that he was going to come right into the league and then all of a sudden lead your team to a playoff berth. That didn't happen. Those guys sat on the bench. They held a clipboard. They put a hat on. They watched the guy in front of them. Now, if Jalen Hurts doesn't get him a playoff victory in his first ever playoff game, it's time to move on. And Kyler Murray, you know, Kyler Murray was in the MVP conversation for 2 years in a row now. He had a horrible game last night. Well, it's time to move on from Kyler Murray. Got to find somebody else. Let me ask you a question. Who the hell are the Arizona Cardinals really finding to replace Kyler Murray? He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. He's been an MVP candidate. If last night tells you anything, it's, my God, it's hard to win in the NFL playoffs, especially with a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback. But for some reason, we all think, hey, if you just get rid of that guy and you get rid of that guy and you give up on that guy and you give up on this guy, it will all change for you very fast. I got news for you. Not happening. Not happening. Everything has got sped up. But you know what hasn't got sped up is the ability for some of these guys to consume the game, let it slow down for them. And yes, guess what? You might have a year or two before you play your best, before you get to the level where you're like, hey, you know what? That guy's pretty good. Josh Allen, perfect example. Somebody asked a question on Twitter today, and I don't think they were asking to be a jerk. He actually said, he quantified the question that I really want to know, and I thought it was a fair question to ask. He said, genuinely asking, this is Brandon Lee Galton. He runs the one of the Eagles blog sites, Bleeding Green Nation. So he asked this question. Any recent examples of a team being very patient with a quarterback they were clearly on the fence about, and the waiting paid off in a big way? And are there any examples of a team moving on too soon and really regretting it? My answer to that would be, I'm not sure that there are examples of somebody who was clearly on the fence about a guy and they waited for that guy and it paid off. The only guy I can really come up with is Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen was a quarterback that his first 2 years, he got drafted number 7 overall, Josh Allen. And he was at a school in college that's not a football factory at Wyoming. He's a top 10 pick. And his first 2 years in the league, he was a very erratic passer. His rookie season, he was 52% completion. His second year, he was 58% completion. He turned the ball over a lot. He threw 12 interceptions his first year. He threw 9 his second year. I don't know that the Bills thought, man, this guy's the guy. But they didn't panic and they didn't give up on him. They saw him go from 52 to 48, from 2,000 yards passing to 3,000 yards passing. And then you know what? In his third year, after playing 30 games of NFL football, he completed 69% of his passes for 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns. He ran for another 421 yards. Pocket passer, yeah, not great his first 2 years. So you would say, man, this guy can't step in there and throw from the pocket. He's completing less than 60% of his passes. And then all of a sudden, he got better. And I'm not suggesting that everybody's going to follow the road of Josh Allen. I'm trying to answer this question that Brandon Lee Galton posts on Twitter. Are there any examples of a team moving on too soon and regretting it? I don't know that answer's out there either. I mean, is Ryan Tannehill a guy that they gave up on too early? Probably not. I mean, I think he played there for about 5 years before they finally moved on from him in Miami. Is there a guy that I'm clearly missing? I just can't think of a guy that I'm like, man, they moved on from that guy too early. But part of the point is this is a lot of times we just think, got to fire Jim Schwartz. He's terrible. Got to fire Jim Schwartz. He's horrible. He's their problem. And then you bring in John Gannon, and now you want him gone too. You ever think that this is what the league is? This is the principles of the league. This is the mindset of the league. It's a passing league. Everybody wants to throw the ball. So defenses are now set up. They don't want to give up big plays. So they let you catch the ball in front, and it's predicated on you making mistakes. Why? Because there's not a lot of good quarterbacks in the league. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. I see some texts coming in. Mike, if you look at who the quarterbacks will be in the NFC in about 2 years, there won't be many elite quarterbacks in the NFC. I think Hurts has a chance to be a perennial Pro Bowler going forward. He's basically still a rookie. Fans need to give him a chance. Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson's 33 years old. You got Aaron Rodgers, who's about 39 years old. So you got those two guys who were really the top, and Brady, obviously, who's 40 years old. Those are the top three quarterbacks, I think, in the NFC right now. Am I missing a guy? Is there a guy that I forgot about? Dak Prescott would probably be, I think we're finding out in these playoffs, there's tiers of quarterbacks. And Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray, those guys are really good, but they're the tier below. It's Brady, it's Rodgers, it's Russell Wilson. They're your championship guys. And then there's that next tier of guys. Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford and Kyler Murray. That group of guys, they're all that next step down. And it's hard to win with even the next step down. So I love how everybody just thinks, well, Jalen Hurts isn't on the Brady, Mahomes, Wilson, Rodgers level. Yeah, well, guess what? Neither is Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray and Matthew Stafford. There's only so many of those guys out there. I like how everybody feels like, well, Hurts isn't the guy. You got to move on from him. To do what? Go get Daniel Jones? To do what? Go get Mitch Trubisky. Look, Mitch Trubisky's a free agent. He was the second pick of the draft. I asked earlier, was he a guy you'd be interested in? Because that's the kind of guy that teams overdraft. Oh, we got to draft a guy. We got to draft a guy. We got to find the next guy. Sometimes if you just maybe keep the guy that you have, let him become comfortable in the offense, let the offense kind of grow together. If your expectation is to win the Super Bowl every year, you're going to be pretty pissed off. I got news for you. But if you're willing to kind of grow with an organization, you say, look, this quarterback, maybe if he's here for 3, 4, 5 years together with the coach and they can build an offense and grow it together, is Jalen Hurts going to win you the Super Bowl next year? I got news for you. No, he's not. But there isn't a quarterback that you're bringing in here outside of Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers that those guys can bring a Super Bowl here. We always want what's behind door number 2. And, man, that door number 3 is getting knocked on very quickly all the time. 609-403-0973. Is the national or Arizona media looking to replace Murray with Wilson or Watson after that abysmal performance last night? Imagine the outcry of Hurts threw arguably the worst pick six in history as Murray did last night. Should the Eagles keep the quarterback room intact and fill the considerable holes throughout the roster? That's from Phil. Yeah, Phil, I've been saying all along, this draft to me is very weak at the quarterback position. So I'm not reaching on one of these quarterbacks. I'll listen to see what Seattle would want. I'll listen to see what Houston, what happens down there. I'll listen to see. I'm not trading for Derek Carr. I'm not trading for Kirk Cousins. Those guys don't appeal to me. I would rather keep the same guy who made the playoffs, showed improvement, and is continuing to get better than start all over again. Because basically what you're doing is you're moving on from Nick Foles to go get Sam Bradford. I mean, Bradford's better than Foles. He has more talent than Foles does. Chip Kelly thought that Foles was just okay, so let me go get Bradford. Bradford was the number one overall pick. Every coach feels like if I get the number one overall pick, I'll make him the best he ever was. And Sam Bradford just had too many flaws. So what do? You get Sam Bradford, then you bring in Mark Sanchez. Well, he was the top pick in the draft. What was he? Number 4. I'll go get Mark Sanchez. And that doesn't work out. You're constantly opening door number 2 and saying, hey, let me try this guy. And then you're ready to open up door number 3. And then you're in this cycle. I was just having lunch with a buddy of mine as a Cowboys fan, a rational Cowboys fan, mind you. He didn't blame the referees. He said, you know what? I watched that game and said every penalty that was called, I have to say, was justifiable. But he brought up an interesting point because I was talking to him. I said, the Cowboys are in some trouble here. And he said, you know what? The Cowboys' ineptitude over the last 27 years is amazing considering they have not had quarterback issues. They have ass backwards themselves into quarterbacks in unconventional ways. They got Tony Romo undrafted. They got Dak Prescott in the 4th round. They've never had to worry about the quarterback situation, really, and yet have Zippo success. When you have the quarterback, you feel like, all right, the rest of the team I can kind of build. The Eagles are kind of opposite right now. They don't really have that star-level quarterback, so they have got to build the rest of the team. There's 2 ways to kind of do this in the NFL. You have that top-level quarterback who makes all the money, and he's so good that your team elevates. Your Rodgers, your Brady's, that group of guys. Or you go the Russell Wilson route and you don't pay the quarterback a whole heck of a lot of money and you pay the team to be around Russell Wilson, who, look, I think Russell Wilson's really good. I don't think he's Brady. He's not Rodgers. He's a step below those guys. But he was good enough to win the Super Bowl because the rest of the team around him was great. You had the Legion of Boom. You had an amazing defense. You had an amazing running game with Marshawn Lynch. So the quarterback didn't have to be Brady. He could be the second-tier guy because the rest of the team was so good. And that's the way the Eagles have to kind of look at this. They have a controllable contract at quarterback with a guy who can win, but they don't have a good enough team around him right now. 609-403-0973. Let me go to Glenn in Egg Harbor Township. What's going on, Glenn?
Yo, Mike, it's funny. I think about quarterback play, and I tell my buddy all the time, there's nothing wrong with being good. Sometimes you say a player's good, people sort of look at you like, I'm thinking, dude, good is not a bad thing. What makes these guys special, Mike, is consistency. Dak Prescott isn't consistent enough. He's good, but he's not consistent enough. The guys who are consistent are the ones who are elite. If you play that position, you'll have moments, Mike. You'll make a throw. You'll have a good game, but who's consistent at doing it? Just because a guy is a backup quarterback gets elevated to the starting role, that doesn't mean he's a starter. That's what people get confused. Just because the backup comes in and now he's the starter, no, he's not. He's the backup. Not all guys are meant to be elevated to that starting role and then play week after week. And that's what people sometimes get confused with to me.
Well, that's what happened. You look at what happened in Washington. They had Tyler Heineke, and they said, look, this guy's good enough, but We know what he is. And then they went out and got Fitzpatrick thinking that was an upgrade. And, of course, Fitzpatrick got hurt. But they got to a point where you're just trying to find anything that's an upgrade. And you're right. The consistency, Fitzpatrick shows flashes, but he's not consistent enough. That's why he can't make the playoffs. That's why, Dak Prescott, he gobbles up on the bad teams. He's phenomenal against these bad teams. But again, people talked about the Eagles. They didn't win a game against a team with a winning record this year. Dallas won one game against a team with a winning record this year. Anytime they played anybody decent, they lost because they don't have the consistent enough play at quarterback.
There were throws to be made in that game against San Fran, and Dak didn't make them. He needs to be a playmaker if he wants to be on that top tier. He's good. And that's
the thing. But we see it in the playoffs, Glenn, is the good guys during the regular season, they're good. But when it gets down to the final 14 and then the final 8, how good are you really? Look, Matthew Stafford has been an excellent player in this league. He's been in the league 13 years. He won his first playoff game ever last night.
Don't trust him, Mike. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not saying I trust him, but my point is exactly what you're saying is he's really good, but he's not good enough to get you over that jump. But guess what? That's my point, though. There's only so many elites, and we're always searching for the elite that – I talked about this a couple of years ago. This ghost that doesn't exist, this franchise quarterback, they don't exist. There's 2 of them. That's it. Everybody else is like, they're the good guy. There's Tom Brady, and in our lifetime was Brady and Manning. And other than those 2, you were lucky if you got to a Super Bowl and won something with the other guys.
So true.
Rodgers now, he's another one. And you know what? Rodgers has one Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers, that's it.
It goes to the premise or the thought that football is the ultimate team sport. No matter, you got 2 sides of the ball. You got so many other factors that come in to win a Super Bowl. Sometimes the quarterback, he has the goods, but the team in its overall just doesn't have it. You know what I mean?
And that's where, Glenn, I appreciate the call. I think the Eagles are in a point where, listen, we're not going to upgrade the quarterback position right now. We're not in that position. Let's keep the quarterback and let's build around this guy, kind of like Seattle did. And you're hoping that Hurts can elevate his play with the better team around him. 609-403-0973. A lot of texts coming in on this conversation. Scott Grayson grades the Eagles' loss. Grayson's grades on the other side. You guys are watching the show. I got to pop a couple of these. Chris Scheiben is watching on YouTube. Says it's being patient while also getting quarterback help. When Allen got better, he also was given the help with the line, Diggs wide out. Chris, that's my point. Let Hurts grow with better players around him. Got a rookie wide receiver and 2 second-year players. It's hard to be elite or even really good when you got a rookie and 2 second-year guys in your arsenal. You give me Smith again. You give me Watkins, move Watkins into the 3rd spot. Find a guy who's a veteran like an Allen Robinson or a Mike Williams. And okay, now Jalen Hurts, he doesn't have to be so pinpoint accurate. These guys make plays for him. Quez Watkins says, I'm fine with keeping Hurts, but he needs to vastly improve his ability to read and throw with anticipation. I would say, Quez, I think some of his receivers need to do a better job of reading the defenses. I don't know that everybody's very good at reading what a zone defense looks like, those receivers, Quez Watkins included. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. If you're watching the show, keep the messages coming. If you're listening on the radio, 609-403-0973. If you're listening on the free mobile app, you can text us through the message us button on the app on your phone. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. 2:30 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles season comes to a close. We grade the season. We grade the game. Grayson's grades from Fox 29, 97.3 ESPN.com. Scott Grayson is with us as we take a look back at the Eagles. Their loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and how this season went. Eliminated. What's next? So many questions. Let's bring Scott Grayson in now. Get Grayson's grades for the final time for the 2021 season. And he joins us now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Scott, what's going on, man?
I'll tell you what, Mike, that game was tough to watch.
It was tough to watch, and I think you've seen a lot in all these playoff games, the separation between the kind of the upper echelon playoff teams and the bottom half of these playoff teams.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we're in for a really good weekend this weekend because the teams that should have won did win, frankly, and that's exactly the case with the Eagles game as well. I think you saw that the teams, and I guess one thing I saw is that, there is a separation there. But I don't think I would change having that seventh team in. You got that extra week of football. And I think, frankly, we learned a lot about this team in this last week, more than we did in the previous 6 weeks,
well,
frankly.
I think that's a good point you make, Scott, is the fact that the Eagles got to play that game. If they would have not made it and they were like right around 500, you could say, okay, they feel pretty good. You got to see how far you are from the number 2 team. Just by playing that game, you're like, okay, we had a nice season. It was fun. We learned some things, but we also learned by playing in that game that we have a lot to fix.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That is what I took away from it. And we had been talking about that narrative for weeks, that the Eagles hadn't played against a good quarterback. What were they going to do when they got one? Had they learned anything from the previous times? And, frankly, what I think we learned from the defensive side is that, no, they didn't learn anything. They didn't learn enough to do anything against a team that was frankly injured and banged up. And, Ryan Kerrigan, of all people, had a game because of those injuries that were taking a toll on the Bucs, and it still didn't matter.
Let me ask you a question regarding that. If I told you before the game, Scott, they were going to have 4 sacks of Tom Brady and 7 punts, how would you tell me that game ended up?
About how I thought it was going to go going in the sense that if that happened, then I would have thought that's all Eagles. That means they're having their way. They're forcing him to hold the ball longer, and therefore they're getting to him. They're hitting him. They're knocking him off his spot. And I would have said, okay, great. I mean, I said that to my son, funnily enough, yesterday. I said, if I told you the Eagles sacked Tom Brady 4 times, would you think that's a win or a loss? And it's amazing how that game went. And I put a lot of it, I put the blame, frankly, on 2 people, and I'll give you a third as well. Number 1, I put it on Jonathan Gannon. Number 2, Jalen Reagor. And number 3, Jalen Hurts.
Let's start with that then. All right, let's go to Hurts. And obviously he's the quarterback. There's going to be more questions. You gave him an F. So let's start with what you thought how he played poorly in that game. Did he miss guys? Did he just, did he not have good reads? Was he inaccurate? Why an F?
An F because I felt like there were reads that were missed. I think that over the last couple of days, we've seen breakdowns from guys like Dan Orlovsky or even Troy Aikman in the middle of the game talking about how you had one-on-one coverage with Devontae Smith. And, he never took it, at least not until it was too late. And you looked at Quez Watkins being open. There were times, quite frankly, I thought the wind was going to be an advantage for the Eagles. Frankly, Brady threw better passes in the wind, and I think the wind affected Jalen Hurts downfield. He had Watkins open a couple times and was unable to hit him. There were times he had him open and didn't throw it. The Devontae Smith play that was an interception. It's not like this offense wasn't moving the ball. They just weren't getting points on the board, and it was because of some of the things that were happening there. His mobility obviously continued to be an issue. I call it, frankly, funny that he's walking out of the locker room in a walking boot after this game, whereas all the other ones he didn't. He must have had that waiting on the plane or the bus every other time for him, so he didn't have people see him with the boot on, but now it's okay. Clearly, he wasn't the same quarterback mobility-wise that he was or threat-wise, and I think these teams started to realize that, and frankly, I think the Bucs, and my fear for the Eagles is the Bucs put on paper exactly how to beat these guys or how to beat Jalen Hurts. And that is load up the box, make him beat you with his arm.
Yeah, and he was unable to do that. How much of this is, Scott, that Jalen Hurts isn't a good passer or he's not very good at reading defenses, as opposed to they don't have a lot of weapons?
It definitely is a little bit of both. But the point where I put it at now is I think we have seen some growth out of Jalen Hurts. And I think that is where you take a positive going into the offseason. It's that this guy grew from last year to this year, and he grew at times even during this season with what he was doing. And now the question is, what will he do with that? And he gives you every impression that he's a guy who goes to work starting basically yesterday, working towards next season. Now, that being said, my biggest problem for him is he's not reading these defenses. He's not seeing where the open guy is going to be. He doesn't have that anticipation to throw a ball while the guy is in coverage, knowing that he can see he'll break open as he's letting the ball go. That kind of next level step, I don't know if he can make that step.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really going to be what's on him here.
Well, obviously, that would go to then what's next for Jalen Hurts. I mean, if you're Howie and you're Andy Weidel and whoever else is sitting in that room, Jeff Lurie, Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and they are evaluating Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, I'm imagining he's got some say here because he works with them. What's the conversation like right now?
It's hard because he's such a likable guy and he is a leader in that locker room, and you've seen that. And I'm sure that, the hardest part here is separating the emotion from the assessment. And I think when you look at what's available, I think if they're going to do their due diligence, which they should, they look at and say, okay, what are our options? And they obviously have these first round picks. They can go and get a proven veteran. Do you really want to part with those? I still believe, Mike, that I'm in the position where I take the stance of, you can go into next year with him. And you had asked the question before about the weapons around him. I think you can still upgrade some things around him. You can definitely get a true number 2 receiver. I think, addition by subtraction in terms of Jalen Reagor would be a step for this team in the right direction. And so I think you can definitely do some things around him to maybe make defenses have to pay better attention to what's going on out there. As far as what you do with, the other quarterbacks or the other options out there, I don't like the options in the draft. I'm really not a big fan of giving up these 3 first-round picks. If you could really build your, a good foundation on defense, because I think those 3 picks should all be used on defense.
I would agree with that. Scott Grayson's grades right now, you gave Jalen Hurts an F, and obviously you gave Sirianni and Gannon both an F as well. And, I guess you could make the argument that they did get out-coached in the game and didn't really have an answer.
Yeah, I really felt like that. Sirianni has, unfortunately, the reputation now of, we were used to Andy Reid going down, and his opening script was always good. Well, with Sirianni, it's been the total opposite. Even against bad teams, they just have not opened games well. Number one, I don't know what you're doing not getting the ball to start the game. Why you give it to Brady? I think that was an absolute failure. I think that you look at Sirianni's offense, and he has to get better at calling those plays and scripting those first 15. They got away from what they wanted to do very early, and that's because of the game situation, and that goes on Gannon in the sense that they never stopped Brady. They never gave their offense a chance to try to find itself before they were looking around saying, we've really got to, rip up this game plan and just start pushing the ball down the field somehow. And I just think that, and Sirianni, frankly, should have been expecting. I think a good coach would have said and looked at Tampa and their personnel and said, they're going to likely load up the box against us. So how do we run the ball? We first have to establish some sort of a pass to loosen that up and then come back with the run game and try to do it that way. But it obviously wasn't there.
Hey, I know everybody seems to be almost wishing that John Gannon gets one of these head coaching jobs. He has 3 interviews. I'll ask you, you gave him an F. He had a rough year. I'm not sitting here banging the drum for John Gannon. However, do you think it's fair to say, hey, against the teams that were a little weaker quarterback-wise, he showed that he had a game plan against those teams that they couldn't beat him. And he doesn't really have the players that he wants for his – are you interested to see what he does with better talent, I guess? Because, I'll say this. Dan Quinn is getting all these head coaching interviews. I said, that's great. You hired Dan Quinn. He's not bringing Micah Parsons with him. So you're going to hire Dan Quinn to be your head coach, and you're going to be disappointed because you're going to be like, well, in Dallas, he had this great defense. Well, yeah, Micah Parsons doesn't come with you. John Gannon doesn't have his Micah Parsons. So would you rather say, hey, I hope he gets hired, or see him in year number 2 with better talent?
I'll start first of all with the fact that I thought that I'm one of those people who would almost like to see him get a head coaching job and see where the Eagles go next after what they experienced this year. I do also believe that, yes, he did not have great personnel on defense. It definitely had holes that good teams were able to expose, and they just were not able to, really accommodate that or find a way to stop that with good teams. So I look at it and say, would he do better with better personnel? Well, against every good quarterback, what was the completion percentage? The style never changed. It wasn't like he said one of these times against one of these good quarterbacks, I'm just going to see if we could try some press coverage. I'm going to see if we can do some more blitzing on these guys and get them moving around. Now, he did get 4 sacks, as we said, against Brady. He didn't have Brandon Graham pretty much the whole season, didn't have Josh Sweat in this playoff game. I guess my thought is,
for instance, Scott, you look at the game, Dallas, for instance, the 49ers weren't blitzing. I mean, they don't blitz at all, hardly. They're just sending 4 guys. I mean, most teams in this league, when they're playing a better quarterback, they're playing cover 2, and they're trying to, they're not. If you blitz Brady, they would have put 50 up against the Eagles. That's the dynamic that's tough. I think that as much as you're frustrated, I think if you take a step back and say, what the heck did Gannon really have to work with? Like, who are you game planning with to say, that's my guy on defense? We're going to build everything around him.
Well, and that's why I'm not sitting here banging a drum saying he has to go. I believe, like you've said, he did not have. There were holes in this defense on every level that every team was able to take advantage of in some way, shape, or form. Just about these bad teams, they weren't able to. So you look and say, okay, well, this defense was able to handle the bad teams. Well, that barely got you into the playoffs. And I'm a believer in saying, okay, what do we have to do to get to the next level? Well, you have to definitely improve defensive personnel. And that's why I go back to say, listen, use at least 2, if not all 3 of these first-round picks on building a good young foundation at a couple of different levels on your defense. That would give Gannon a little bit more to work with. And if he doesn't go anywhere, I think we're definitely going to be able to sit back and say, okay, if they do what we're talking about with these first-round picks, then the evaluation is definitely on next year on Gannon. And if it's more of the same, then I'm sorry, but nothing changed at that point.
Oh, listen, I mean, I'm looking last night, and I'm looking around. I said, man, because both Harris and McLeod are free agents. Well, one's 32, the other one's 31. I mean, you're asking 2 guys over 30. You had just good safeties, not great safeties. No play. There's not a playmaker. I mean, even like Darius Slay's pretty good, but you can only do so much with one corner if he's your best guy in the defense. Like, if you have a great corner like Jalen Ramsey, it helps because he's got Aaron Donald, and then when he was in Jacksonville, he had Ngakoue. I mean, he had that big rusher. They don't have that big rusher. They don't have that big linebacker. They don't have really Fletcher Cox isn't the same player. Hargrave slipped. They just don't have the explosion. It's a lot of good, not great, right?
Absolutely. And that's why it was an average defense. You have average players, you're going to come up with an average defense. And that's basically what they were. The best friend to a defensive back is good pressure. And like you said, I mean, these corners on these teams that are in the playoffs are really good because of the pressure that is created that forces them to have the opportunities to pick off passes. Look at what Rasul Douglas is doing right now in Green Bay. Well, is that because he's suddenly figured out how to play the position even better at times than he did, in his other stops? No, it's because the pressure's there to force the ball come out, and he's jumping on it and taking advantage of it. So, yes. And I know this team philosophy is you win up front, especially on defense. So I will not be surprised if there's at least one of these first-round picks, maybe even 2, that go to the defensive line. I frankly would like to see them grab one of these linebackers that we saw in that national championship game that can move around. But we know Howie's tradition of not drafting a first-round linebacker. So like you said, though, there's plenty of opportunities to improve your backside as well. I mean, you could put another solid corner opposite Darius Slay. You could go get, a top-notch safety, perhaps, that's young, to build the back and the front and try to work with that in between. They're going to have some money in free agency. How will they spend that? So, I think ultimately you look at this team and say they overachieved this year for sure. But what steps are you going to take now to then take another step in the right direction next year and maybe win a playoff game?
Scott Grayson's grades are posted at 973ESPN.com. I think, they don't have a lot of free agents that are tough decisions. I guess one interesting thing for me, Scott, what happens with Jason Kelsey and then Brandon Brooks. He did not play all year. He missed most of last year. I think he's only played a game and a half in the last 2 years. He would be an interesting I think he has some dead money, but a little bit of cap relief. I think it's like $3.5 million of cap relief, but there would be a lot of dead money there. I think that's a big decision for them, what to do with Brandon Brooks. The Jason Kelsey thing, obviously what's going on with Hurts. And you have McLeod and Harris. Steve Nelson is a free agent. Brandon Graham, what's going to be his deal? He's got another year left on the deal. You're getting a 34-year-old guy coming off of a major injury. So, Derek Barnett, that's another one.
Yeah, Barnett, I think, has shown you that he doesn't have the mentality or the up here to stop making stupid penalties. He's killed this team at various times with the penalties, and I think you're right. There's a lot of guys there that you draw some emotion to. I mean, Jason Kelsey, I would love to see Jason Kelsey maybe give it one more year. And I look at it and you say, well, it's, are you just emotionally tied to him? No, I mean, I love what the guy's done, but he up until, Sunday, he had one penalty all year. So he's been playing at a very high level.
He's not a declining player that's at the end. He's been a guy who's still very good. They do have some in-house options, though. It'd be interesting if Kelsey retired. Would they go with Dickerson, Sayamala, Jack Anderson?
Right.
Who would get that center role? Or would, obviously there's a guy in the draft that you can get around 15, 16, 19, Linderbaum.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of options they can go through there. I think this offensive line was a strength of this team, and it's certainly a priority for them to figure out how to keep it among one of the best lines in the league. You got your left tackle. Lane Johnson, I think, is still serviceable at right tackle. You've got, I think if Kelsey's back, he's obviously your center, but you mentioned some of the options. I really liked what I saw out of Dickerson at left guard. I don't know that I would want to move him from that spot. I liked him in my lot on that side. So your line is set. You talked about Brandon Graham. I'd let him play out the last year and see what happens there. As far as Brandon Brooks goes, I think that's a tough decision. But if you can use that money elsewhere and it's more, serviceable for you to do something with that and eat the dead money from his contract, then perhaps I think you need to do that. He's a great player when he's healthy, but man, he's really hurt you when he's not. And that's been kind of the sense the last 2 years, as you pointed out. So they have a lot of questions that they need to go through and answer. And not the least of which is, what did Sirianni learn this year? What will he grow from this? How will he grow from this? If Gannon's back, what did he learn? How will he grow from this? How will this team address the draft? So many great questions. It's going to be an interesting offseason, as it usually is around here. Obviously they're going to have a tougher schedule next year too. So, I looked at this schedule this year and said at the back end that they were going to win some games. I did say 9 wins going into the season, and it was totally because of the schedule. Next year is going to be harder. I don't know that you're going to have as easy a time, getting to 8-9 wins unless they make some big changes here.
Scott Grayson on Fox 29, Grayson's grades at 97.3ESPN.com. Season in the books, off-season here. We'll talk to Scott in the off-season draft and all that good stuff, free agency. And, of course, you can check him out on Fox 29. Props and locks, of course, all throughout the playoffs here on Fox 29. All right, Scott, good stuff as always. Another great season, man.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it, Mike.
All right, that's Scott Grayson. Of course, you can check out Grayson's grades after every Eagles game over at 97.3ESPN.com. There are no more Eagles games, so the next set of grades will be free agency and the draft. And when we come back, I got plenty more, including I'm going to be ranking the remaining teams in my who's in, who's out today in the 4 o'clock hour. Stick around for that. All right, coming up on the 3 o'clock hour, Jeff Nadeau, give us a couple of best bets for tonight and the rest of this week. We'll talk to him about the wild card weekend the divisional round that is coming up. We'll also get his thoughts on biggest need in this offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. You guys have a lot of texts rolling in. I see them on the text board, so I'll bring up some of the text messages to Jeff, and he and I can go back and forth because there's a lot of them. So if you have a text message you want Jeff and I to kind of cut up, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live on the YouTube channel, you can leave a comment in the comments section, and we'll talk with Jeff Nadeau on the other side. Michael Caskey-Blomain on the Sixers. Some new news on Ben Simmons. Go to our website, 973ESPN.com right now to get the very latest on what could be happening with Ben Simmons less than a month from the deadline. All right, 3 o'clock Sports Bash. It's brought to you by the Piccalilli Inn, your best pick for South Jersey's best wings. Route 206, Shamong, New Jersey. Mike Gill with you till 6. We've got divisional matchup set. We'll dive into the lines on those games. The opening lines are out. See if Jeff Nadeau has any interest in them. A little college hoops, see what his favorite plays are, get his thoughts on the Eagles. Now, I told you to text in if you have questions for the segment, and we're getting bombarded with questions for Jeff and I. So I'll let Jeff play along with some of the text messages that are coming in. We got people on the video stream that want to get questions in. So we'll do that. If you want to text in for Jeff and I, 609-403-0973. It is a Sports Bash Live. Jeff Nadeau, he is the host of the Sit Down podcast. He is a sports bettor. He is a content creator, and he joins me right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Nadeau, what's up, man?
Always good to talk to you, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good. Eagles lose, and obviously we anticipated that happening. They made the playoffs. I think it was good to make the playoffs, Jeff, for this reason. You might have had a little feel-good of like, hey, they had a good season. You got to see how far away they are. So I think getting your ass whipped in the playoffs is a good thing for that reason. You get a good indication of how far you really are.
Yeah, I look, I don't I'd have probably been a little bit more annoyed if they didn't have 3 first-round picks coming up. But, yeah, I will say that, you get some experience, you gain some experience. Anytime – look, Mike, anytime you can play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers twice in a season if you're Jalen Hurts, and that's helpful, okay? We have to remember, this is the first true full season Jalen Hurts has had. So, again, this is all long-term very good for the kid. Look, did he play well? No, he didn't. But it was his first playoff game against probably one of the, they are one of the best teams in the NFL. So I don't put a lot of stock. Look, all these people piling on Jalen Hurts are imbeciles. They don't know anything about football.
Well, I look at it like this too. All right. I want to see Jalen continue to grow in an offense for the second. He's changed offenses. I think he said like 4 straight years he's been in a different offense. And get some talent around him. Like, it's hard to evaluate a guy when you've got 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end, really, as your entire offense. I mean, it's really hard to grow as a player when you don't have a lot of weapons.
Yeah, you're 100% right. This was really, Mike, this has been a problematic issue for this team really since Andy Reid, okay? I mean, they've had 1 year, 2 years where they went out and got their quarterback weapon. And you look at what happened when they did that. They went to the Super Bowl, right, with Terrell Owens. But you look at the Carson Wentz era in this town. He had some weapons, but nothing crazy. They've never surrounded their quarterbacks with weapons. You're going to have the opportunity this season and the offseason to not only address that in free agency, but in the NFL draft. Devontae Smith, that's a great foundation piece. Dallas Goedert, great foundation piece. But, I mean, Mike, I think one of the real concerns that I have, again, is the fact that, I mean, the high-level picks for this team, at least from the first round standpoint, have been just horrific. I mean,
yeah, they had a bad drought there that has kind of caught up to them in this point. They had the Barnett pick, which they got to move on from Barnett. The Rager pick, they've got to move on from Rager.
Mike,
Dillard has not
Smith?
helped them out. Marcus Smith did not help them. Yeah, they had a lot of guys who have not had any impact. That's no impact. Zippo, Marcus Smith, no impact. Dillard, essentially no impact. Rager, a negative impact, if you will. I mean, Derek Barnett, he's been average at best. So, yeah, you've got to start, and they have started to come around. The 18 draft class was pretty good. I think last year's draft class, pretty good. This year's draft class seemingly has been pretty good with Smith and Dickerson. You got those 2 guys. They've had Milton Williams, looks like he can play. Gainwell looks like he can play. You got to continue, though, to hit there. You can't have these in and out. You can't go off for 2 or 3 years and then say, oh, well, we did okay there. So, yeah, they are on the clock in terms of needing to hit. They got to hit 2 out of these 3 minimally.
Yeah, this is the most important draft they've had in a long time. This is the regime of going from the Carson Wentz and the year where you won the Super Bowl. Now it's time to stop screwing around. It's time to start competing again, right? You made the playoffs this year. You overachieved. It's time to start filling the holes that you have. And 3 picks is going to go a long way. As I said, Mike, you can go out and get yourself a really good edge player like a David Ojabo. You can get yourself a really good corner, whether it's Ahmad Gardner, Kyer Elam, Roger McCreary, really any of those. You can get yourself a receiver in Traylon Burks, a big 6'3" kid that go up and look. I want a big receiver on this team, and not J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Give me Traylon Burks now.
I like Mike Williams. How about him?
Anybody like that. I want a big kid that can go up and get the football. You already have some speedsters. Look, Quez Watkins, nice player, but he shouldn't be, constantly a target in this offense. It needs to be Devontae, another receiver, and the name you're hearing, Mike, is Calvin Ridley, right? We've heard that name a lot. I want to ask you though, and I'm not being, rude and not understanding people's personal lives, but Mike, there's been some time. This team's had some issues with these guys off the field. Calvin Ridley hasn't exactly been easy to deal with off the field, Mike.
Yeah, Ridley's a guy that, to me, I mean, he was supposed to be like a number 1 guy. He really hasn't lived up to that down there in Atlanta. He's got some, other issues. I like Mike Williams. That's the guy. To me, he's a big physical guy. He can be that kind of, he's been proven that he can move the chains. He catches the football. You got a guy that can go up and get the ball. Then you have him and Smith, and then Watkins. You got Watkins, who can be the speedster. You have Williams, the big physical guy. Smith, who can kind of run smooth routes. Watkins, who can be the guy in the slot. You can run the jet sweeps, do the bubble screens. You have 3 different styles of guys. Williams, to me, is a good fit for this offense.
Yeah, Mike, I often wish, and I truly mean this. I wish they did a reality show where they allowed a individual of a team to be in control of a draft. I guarantee you I could get a very good 7-round mock and address the free agency at a high level, whether it's Mike Williams. I wish I could do that. That's my dream.
We talked about that a couple of weeks. Like if we did a draft for like 5 years of like having us do like a show on draft night and we would draft and then kind of keeping track of it to see how it would all work out. That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome.
All right. Some people are texting in. They want to get our opinions and have us kind of go back and forth on these. Stan in Galloway says, guys, I believe Hurts is a money move. Also, it's cost effective to build around a 2nd-round pick. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Is you have the quarterback at a low cost, you can build the rest of the team. Conversely, you look at what happened in Seattle. They were a Super Bowl team, and then Wilson got paid, and they couldn't keep the rest of that team, and now they're not even a playoff team. You're going to see that happen in Dallas. They had to pay Dak Prescott. The rest of that team is now going to fall apart because it can't pay everybody. Does Philly stick with Hurts because they don't have to pay him?
100%. I'm blown away at some of these people. And this is where Philadelphia fans, they get a negative reputation. This is why with this nonsense where every week this guy's – and I've been a problem with it sometimes where – but more for me, it's long-term. I don't like Ben Simmons because it's been a long-term problem. I'm not going to get mad because Jalen Hurts doesn't play well in a playoff game against one of the best teams in the NFL, okay, with limited weapons. And a person like Jalen Reagor on the field who could be one of the worst overall players in the NFL. It's that simple. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback next year. He's not going anywhere. There's no one they want in the draft. Look, will they take some maybe in the 5th or 6th round? I don't know. I don't think they need to. They've got Minshew in case it doesn't work out. He's a quarterback. And that person that sent that text in, shout out to him. There are smart people everywhere in Galloway Township, and Stan is one of them. Very well said. That's a great point. And again, this is a good quarterback, a kid that I think is only going to get better. Give the kid some weapons. Give him a better defense.
All right, I'm going to throw a name out at you. I want to see your reaction, all right?
Yep. Free
agent. Now, how about this statistic? This gentleman has a better record with his head coach, the head coach quarterback combination, than Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury. Now, everybody likes Murray, number 1 pick in the draft. I don't think people are ready to give up on him, right? But Mitch Trubisky and Matt Nagy have a better record as a coach quarterback than Kingsbury and Murray. He's a free agent, Mitch Trubisky, former number 2 overall pick. Would you take a flyer?
No. For what?
Everybody likes to get the guy. He was the number 2 pick.
Yeah, but
I can get the most. Like coaches always feel that I'm the coach who can get the most out, or like that guy didn't get out of him what I could
you
get
know
out
what
of him.
Mitch Trubisky could be? Like I maybe not with the Bears, but like I think he could go like where if I'm this team, who I would Pittsburgh. I would take a shot with him.
Yeah.
A team like that.
Oh, somebody I think is going to do it and say, look, he was the number 2 pick. We can get something out. Now, I'm not even a Trubisky fan, but I'm just saying, like, if you're not happy with Hurts, would you say, hey, you got the number 2 pick in the draft?
If I'm like maybe even like like Tampa, a team that down the road is going to need a quarterback. Maybe he's a great backup. Put Trubisky. He's like Nick Foles. I think he can come in and give you something. He's a starting level. I wouldn't want him leading my team. I think long term, but like team like Pittsburgh, I think could take a shot with him and think maybe he's a better option than we have now. And maybe he could spring and be something. And if he's not, we'll just take someone else.
Yeah, I just the one thing about Hurts, and look, I'm not sitting here saying I'm ready. I have already been on the record said I'm bringing him back, and I'm using those picks to build around him. Let the team continue to get better around him before I make my decision. I want to see him with better talent before I give up. Tampa Bay said, you're not going to run the ball on us. We're going to put 9 in the box, and he couldn't perform. Are other teams going to follow that next year and say, hey, you're not going to run the ball all day on us? Good luck. Throw the ball.
Yeah, but again, Mike, here's what you can do against the Eagles in a passing game. Just bracket Smith, a safety over the top. They have no one else. This has always been the issue. This is the issue a year or two ago where you're bringing Travis Fulgham in game. Like, you have to have more than one receiver now. You can't have Deshaun Jackson who's out every other play. Like, you need capable guys. They didn't have it. They haven't had a capable veteran receiver on this team in God knows how long that plays regularly. Not this slop off the bench that might have a game or two where they play well and they don't see him for 6 more games. They need Smith, Goddard, and you got to go out and not get one. I think you need 2 more receivers on this team. Give me a big-time kid that can go up and catch the football and another speedster. Because Reagor, he ain't it. He ain't it.
Oh, no, there's no question, Reagor. The problem is I don't think they can get rid of him because of the contract. So I think he'll be on the roster again next year. But you can't – like, I blame the coach for that on Sunday – for putting, like, at what point is the guy can't play? He stinks. That's not his fault anymore. You keep putting him out there.
Mike, remember when the Eagles won the Super Bowl 2018, that roster receivers they had, okay? They had like 2 or 3 really, like, look, not that they're not in, like, Torrey Smith and Alshon Jeffrey are not in, like, the best part of their career, but they were still very productive. Okay.
Well, and they had they had complementary roles to each other. You had Alshon, who was the 50-50 guy, the chain mover. You had Torrey Smith, who could stretch the field. They had different skill sets that you complemented each other.
And you had the LeGarrette Blount, who could pound in the running game. You had the speedsters in like Clement or whoever. So they need to get back to that. And for God's sakes.
Well, how about this? Okay, go ahead. Finish your point.
For God's sakes, 2 of those picks need to be on edge, linebacker, and a secondary player. Yeah. Listen, I wouldn't worry about a safety, okay? Because I think they're okay, honestly. But
they're both free agents, the safeties, though.
Well, I think
both over 30. Harris and McLeod are both over 30 and both free agents.
I think Harris is back. McLeod I'd let walk. He's kind of like Jenkins in a way. He's always injured too. I would look towards a safety in the 2nd or 3rd round. Go and find yourself another corner that you can put next. Because Steven Nelson, decent player, but he's a 1-year deal. You can keep him around too. You have a good nickel.
Maddox can play.
Yeah, you need to get a big-time corner that can go opposite of Slay.
Well, and I tell you another, Jeff. They got to find the next Fletcher Cox because he's not Fletcher Cox anymore. So they need another. Sadly, Brandon Graham's coming back. He's not going to be the same player. Josh Sweat, all right. Barnett, I would imagine, walks. They're going to have to find an edge. I agree with you there. They got to find another tackle because Fletcher Cox is just not the same player. So that's a spot where you got to find a guy.
If I'm them, okay, and I'm not, but if I am, I would say we need. If you can get Ojabo, that's got to be the pick. It's got to be. He's an edge player. They don't care.
Well, the one thing then, for all you just said, Ojabo, if Roseman has shown anything in his past, he will draft edge rusher. So you got that going for you.
Right. And I think if he's there, I think he's going to be the pick. The good thing is you have 2 back-to-back picks, right? So you can really, hurt a team. You can hypothetically look, they're not going to take a linebacker. I don't think Nakobe Dean's they're not going to pick him. Okay. It's Ojabo, and then I think you go after either Gardner, Elam or McCreary. Then you get yourself that's what I would do. I think that'd be a very fine draft. I'd be completely happy with that. You can go out and get a linebacker in the 2nd or 3rd round. Maybe a Cade Mays or somebody like that. Or the kid from LSU, Clark. I think you have a lot you can do in these first 4 picks. A lot.
Real quick, you got I think you got Mailata, you got Dickerson. You hope Kelsey comes back. I would imagine Driscoll. Your offensive line's essentially going to be the same again next year, right?
Yeah, well,
Goddard and Smith, Sanders, Hurts. I mean, the offense is going to essentially be the same. You just need to get another receiver or 2.
I think, and look, they need a point of contention in the draft needs to be they need to go out and get a center, I think, long-term, a new center, because Kelsey's going to retire at some point. So
I'm wondering if they're going to use Dickerson at center or Sayamala at center, because they were both centers in college.
Well, we'll see. I think whatever they're going to do, they have a lot of picks, and I think later in the draft there's some good interior offensive line. But offensively, I just want another receiver. I've said that all year.
Well,
Mike.
I think they could get a free agent like Allen Robinson or Mike Williams. T.J. White Hilton's a little old, but
I would also look to
how about Odell? You like Beckham?
Oh yeah, I love Odell Beckham. Look, if I'm them as well, I think at some point I would probably target maybe another. I mean, unless they want to keep Jordan Howard, who actually was, I thought, damn good this year.
You got Boston Scott and Howard are both free agents, but I don't know that they're going to get a lot of interest on the market. So you could probably bring your core of backs back.
I think Jordan Howard, I would be more inclined to keep him over Boston Scott. But it's that's the good thing about offensively with this team. I don't think they're that far away on offense. It's just they have a wealth of riches here. Are they going to value it and do it well with it?
All right, Jeff Nadeau, let's look at the division games real fast, see what sticks out to you. Tennessee, 3.5 over Cincinnati. I got to tell you, I was not on Cincinnati at all year. But my biggest takeaway from the weekend is Cincinnati is going to be good for a while.
Yeah, I agree. That's and that's what getting the right quarterback does for you, Mike. I mean, that's pretty simple. I will say this. I bet the over in this game already. I think it's a good play.
You got over 47.
Yeah, that's what I played. I think both offenses are really good. I think this is where the defenses falter a little bit. I don't love Cincy's defense. I think the Titans could really beat them up, especially with Derrick Henry back. They're very good in the red zone offensively, Tannehill and that crew. I think this is first to 27 wins. I think it's like a 27-24 type of game. I'm willing to believe. Look, as long as we get good weather, obviously this time of year, Tennessee's kind of a weird place. I guess it could be cold, but it's not really a snowy type of spot. So I think when you look at the long-term weather, low 40s, sunny, no wind, I think the over makes a lot of sense here. And I'm getting it under 48, which I want.
All right. The NFC Niners, Packers. Packers are 5.5. I was a little surprised. I thought that number might have been 6.5, closer to 7.
Yeah, look, Mike, if the Niners are dogs, I'm going to keep leaning them here. Look, I don't want Shanahan as a favorite, but I mean, as a road dog, I mean, this team's solid. I mean, defensively, they're a lot better than they get credit for. When you look at the numbers here, defensively and offensively, they're not 6 points apart, these teams. They're not. Okay, I'm going to wait on this one, see if I can get, somehow like a 7.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think it should be a good teaser game. But in the NFC, if you're going to give me the Rams as a dog, I'm in. I think the Rams are the best team in the NFL.
You got the Rams as a 3-point dog.
Yeah, I already took it. I love the Rams.
You're in on that. 48.5, by the way.
Yeah. Hard to beat, hard to win a Super Bowl 2 times in a row. I think this is where Tampa goes down.
Yeah,
Rams are a better team. They have the much better defense. You got to attack them vertically. Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham. That secondary is not great. And that's the concerning part of the Eagles. That's not a great secondary. Listen, I think Stafford could have a big game. I'm going to lean the Rams here to get the job done.
Jeff, they do. I kind of like Buffalo getting 2.
Yeah, I do as well. It wouldn't surprise me if Buffalo is facing the LA Rams in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, though, have been really good, man. Defensively, they figured it out. Uh, but yeah, this is a great rematch. Didn't they play each other last year? I feel like they did. There was a couple of weird situations. Maybe I'm thinking of the Titans. I don't know. But yeah, I think it's passing the torch. Mahomes, he's been great. But Josh Allen's been damn good, too. This is where another defense in the Chiefs falters. I really believe that. I think the Bills are just a better all-around team. We know they can play in the elements. I don't think going to Arrowhead's going to be a big problem. Yeah, I agree. It's already been bet down from 2.5 to 2. So,
Yeah.
I
Over
think
under 55, by the way.
Yeah, it's high. It's high for a playoff game. It really is. Look, I like the Bills. I like both dogs, Bills or Rams. I think both money lines are solid.
All right, we'll get a college basketball thought. This guy wants to know, ask Jeff if he caught the wild ending in the Villanova-Xavier game, how they took 3 off the board like 15 minutes after the game ended, causing Nova to cover. I think you talked about that game last week when you were on.
Yeah, I think I did see that. Yeah, listen, you got to wonder what goes on behind the scenes in some of these situations. That's one of them. You ever watch a game, Mike, where you have like +6 and it's an 8-point game and the team comes up and they go to the handshake line and somebody throws a half-court shot and they take you away. Did that go in or not? You got to wonder some of this stuff. What counts? What doesn't count? Yeah, I did see that. It's basketball, man. It's just sports betting. It's how it goes sometimes. It can be
all
ugly.
Right. What's your college basketball thoughts for this week?
Yeah, so I could go a little, go through kind of everything here. I feel like I'm not going to because we don't have much time. But yeah, listen tonight. I'm liking St. Bonaventure. I think this team. This is and it's a tough spot. It's a flip on the road. It's not easy to win on the road in college basketball, but I think Bonaventure's really turned the new leaf. I think this team's really good. They're 2-0 to start the A10, and I just think they're a tough matchup for Dayton. Dayton's a young, inexperienced team, really likes to get to the basket, get into the teeth of the defense, and Bonaventure just doesn't allow that. They're a good, solid, veteran-led team. Going on the road's not going to be a big problem. And in a coin flip game, St. Bonaventure shoots the free throws at 78%. It's hard to not play them in games like this. They don't turn the ball over. They're not going to be bothered by the big lights of a tough Dayton atmosphere. I think Bonnie's going the road and get another big road win here. They need it. They're on the bubble. You can't lose games like this.
It's Osunier. There you go. And the Bonnies tonight.
Shout out Pleasantville.
-1 is the number there.
Oh, no way. I got them +1, Mike.
Dayton -1.
Okay, it's still +1.
Yeah,
it was
+1 Bonnies.
Okay,
yeah.
How about that?
All right, so there you go. Jeff Nadeau, how's the sit down?
Sit down's killing it. We have a great episode this week, very local flavored. We're talking about the 90s in Philadelphia. It's one of the wildest times in American Mafia history. John Vesey, John Stanfa, the Young Turks in Philadelphia. It's going to be a fun show. So make sure you check that out. Sit Down kills it. I mean, 100,000 listens already this month.
I just watched there's a documentary on Netflix, the New York versus the mob. Did you see that? New York City versus the mob. It's like a 3-part like miniseries or something.
Fear City, yeah, it's great. It's
what's it called?
Fear City.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, Mike, listen, this is why we created this show. The mafia is so involved in American history, really in every major event. It's just it's a fascinating underworld. Fascinating.
The podcast is called The Sit Down. That's Jeff Nadeau. All right, Jeff. Enjoy the football this weekend.
Same to you, Mike. Thanks.
And all the college hoops as well. You can check out Big Man on basketball as well at Jeff Nadeau. That's where you can find all that good stuff. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, if you're watching the show live on the YouTube channel, you got to see Jeff right there. And, of course, if you're out there listening on the radio, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the text board. And if you're listening on the free mobile app, you can get involved that way as well. Just message us through the free mobile app. Somebody texted in about what I said about Trubisky and gave me a alternative. Hard pass on that guy's alternative. Hard pass. I'll give it to you coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. 331 Sports Best Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video on our YouTube channel. Use the YouTube app on your phone, laptop, smartphone, smart TV, I should say. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show. You can follow me there. You can always be a part of the show in a multitude of ways through the app on your phone. You can listen to the show on your phone and message us through the app on your phone. You can text us 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Phone lines open 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Get on board that way as well. Text messages been coming in all day. This one says, Mike, Andy Dalton can win more games with this Eagles teams than Hurts can. Prove me wrong. Dalton would win. Now, first off, I can't prove you wrong that Dalton can win more games than Hurts. All I could say is Andy Dalton had a chance to be the quarterback in Dallas, a Dallas team that won 12 games this year. Andy Dalton was the quarterback last year and couldn't get out of his own way. He was dreadful this year in Chicago. He was pretty bad at the end of his career in Cincinnati. Andy was a decent quarterback for a stretch in Cincinnati, but he hasn't been a relevant starting quarterback in this league for you're going on, let's see. Last time Andy was any good, you're going back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably about 6 years ago was the last time Andy was decent. 2016. He hasn't been in a playoff game since 2015. You're going 7 years back. To say Andy Dalton gives you a better chance to win is preposterous. Here's why. First off, Andy Dalton, not an accurate passer. He's 62% for his career. Not good enough. Not in today's game. That's the problem. Dalton just not an accurate enough passer in today's game. He was decent back in the early part of the 2000s when you can kind of, chuck it down the field. He had a pretty strong arm, but he's not an accurate passer. And in today's game, 62% not good enough. He showed in Dallas, that he just wasn't good enough. So, no, I'll pass on Dalton. To say that he could win more games than Hurts in this offense, it's kind of tough to say that because this team was predicated so much on running the ball, and Hurts added to the run game. That led to them having a lot of success. If you have Andy Dalton here, you might ask them to throw the ball more, and there's just not a lot of weapons. I was just watching a Baldy breakdown in the break, and he showed how Tampa Bay defended the Eagles. And you remember the game in the playoffs where Carolina beat the Eagles and just absolutely just wrecked them? It was Todd Pinkston getting thrown around by Ricky Manning Jr. You remember that game? That's essentially what happened to Jalen Reagor this weekend. He just absolutely got thrown around like a rag doll. Couldn't get off man coverage, just can't get open. So every time Hurts goes back to pass, there's a guy that he thinks should be in a spot that just can't get off the line of scrimmage. So you're taking one of his reads completely out of the equation all day long. He can't get off the line. He can't break free. They're playing man coverage, single up man coverage on the outside with Jalen Reagor, your number 2 receiver, and he can't get 5 yards off the line. So Andy Dalton can be a better passer than Jalen Hurts, but the options are still very limited in this pass game. And I think this offense, I said, I don't like Trubisky. I'm not a Mitch Trubisky fan here. I thought Trubisky as the number 2 pick in the draft was an absolute joke. That being said, if you told me I'm ready to move on from Jalen Hurts, I'm trying to find options that are out there outside of the draft because I don't like this draft class. He would be a guy that I would be somewhat intrigued by, at least, to say, hey, he was the number 2 overall pick. He shouldn't have been the number 2 overall pick, but you can make an argument that he has the talent, at least, to be a first-round guy. Trubisky has a pretty strong arm. He can run, so he has that element that he can move with his feet. I think one of his problems is not a very accurate thrower. Not a great decision maker. But I would take my chances with Trubisky at his stage of his career and his upside over Andy Dalton. I mean, Dalton to me is just another one of those guys that, hey, he had his run. He's past his prime. The game has kind of moved past what he did well. So to answer that guy's text message, Andy Dalton can win more games with this Eagles team than Hurts can. Prove me wrong. I don't think anybody will be able to prove you wrong. We'll never see Andy Dalton in this offense, but I would disagree. And he also went on to say Dalton would be better than Mitch Trubisky. I would disagree with that as well.
Well, the thing that I think that texture probably is overlooking, Mike, and that, maybe they don't value this, but in the real world of the NFL, they value it. Maybe the texture doesn't, but the reality is that Jalen Hurts has something that both Dalton and Trubisky don't have, and that is high leadership qualities, and the players follow him and believe in him. And at the end of the day, in the NFL, if the players believe in you and they'll follow you, a quarterback always going to have an advantage over some random fill-in-the-blank
That's
guy.
another interesting point, because I think Dalton is so tainted that if he comes into a situation, he has almost become a punchline or a joke.
Exactly.
Like in Chicago when they named him the starter, I mean, people just ridiculed him right from the get-go. He didn't really
seriously.
Nobody gave him a chance because everybody said this guy's no good. And quite frankly, he wasn't very good this year. 8 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 63% of his passes. He's just not an accurate enough thrower.
He's just an average backup quarterback now.
He was good at a time. I'm not blasting Dalton. There was a time when he was a decent starting quarterback, but at 34 years old, and those days are behind him.
Yeah.
Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Sixers. The latest on Ben Simmons. Yes, there is some new news on Ben Simmons and why the Warriors are showing why the Sixers are missing Ben Simmons. We'll get into that next. Michael Kasky-Blomain, CBS Sports. Sports Bash live on your radio, 97.3 ESPN, on your mobile phone, on the free mobile app, and live video on the YouTube channel, brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online, eastcoastroofing.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Michael Kasky-Blomain is here from CBS Sports. And new Ben Simmons news, kind of. We'll get the latest from MKB. Sixers with a lifeless loss yesterday in Washington. I guess, Michael, you would chalk that up to one of those, what are they called, an NBA scheduled loss yesterday?
Yeah, I think that's fair, Mike. After a tough back-to-back that ended with an away game in Miami on Saturday night, to have to turn around and play a matinee in D.C. on that Monday, it's a schedule loss, I guess you could say, is fair.
Yeah, a Saturday night in Miami seems to wear you out for a couple of days, they say.
Yeah, that's what they say.
All right, let's get to some of the other news here. Michael, you wrote over at CBS Sports about some of the stuff going on with Ben Simmons. It appears, per Ramona Shelburne at ESPN, that Ben Simmons is basically prepared to sit out the rest of the season here. He's being fined for not showing up to practices, workouts, weightlifting sessions, games. That doesn't seem to be bothering him, and it appears that he is at peace at sitting out the rest of this season.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Mike. And that was reported, if you remember, before the season started, that could be a possibility. But I think a lot of people thought that, A, obviously he would be traded before the deadline, and B, that ultimately once the fines started really stacking up, that he could potentially, change course and want to be back out there. But yeah, according to the latest reporting, nothing has changed in terms of his mindset of not wanting to play again for the Sixers ever. And obviously, especially this season, regardless of the fines that have been, stacking up consistently. I think there were some conflicting reports out there, but Ben has been getting fined for, like you said, every game, every practice that he's missed over the past, this season. The fines are still coming in, but obviously that's not swayed his decision at this point.
Yeah, despite the fine, Simmons prepared to sit out. Now, there's a lot of other stuff surrounding him. Brian Windhorst last week on the Hoop Collective podcast threw out the whole scenario of the Sixers holding on to him the rest of the season and then trying to do a sign and trade. Mark Stein has also brought that same report up, that the team just might hold on to Simmons at the deadline and then try to include him in a sign and trade. And the name he brings up is James Harden. It sounds like sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, but is that the thing that is gaining the most momentum over moving him at the deadline?
Yeah, I think so, Mike. And Harden is obviously the name that's mentioned, but the thought process, I think, is the same, even if it's not specifically for James Harden. I think that their thought within Philadelphia's front office is that there could potentially be, just more attractive players available after the season, whether that's Harden, whether something happens in Washington and Bradley Beal decides that he's not going to stay there for long term. Portland's had obviously a up and down season. They haven't been great. Maybe something happens with the Lillard situation. And I think that, with the offers that we've seen floated out for Simmons at this point up to the trade deadline, I think the line of thought is that, the team would be better off long-term not taking some of these deals for, below all-star caliber players and potentially waiting out for, a bigger name like Harden or Beal or Lillard.
Now, obviously, you at the deadline, things can change a lot. Do you anticipate, Michael, that Ben Simmons' name is going to be at the top of most teams' wish lists here, and that they will get a lot of offers at the 11th hour?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think over the next couple of weeks, we'll see a lot of reports popping out about teams that are potentially interested, packages that the Sixers have been offered or are going to be offered. And there's a real possibility, like you said, that, teams could get desperate. The playoff and the title race this season seems to be, relatively wide open. There's not necessarily a clear-cut favorite, which means that I think a lot of teams have, a feeling that they could make a real run in the postseason, and that potentially adding a guy like Simmons could, give them that boost that they need for the second half of the season. So, obviously none of us know whether or not a trade is going to materialize, but I definitely think over the next 3 weeks, we're going to hear a whole lot of, rumors and speculation.
Does the team's output affect the decision of Daryl Morey? In other words, hey, we're getting better. We're starting to, we're moving up the standings. Maybe we should do something, or do they stick to their guns?
Mike, I think the biggest thing that's happened in that regard recently was on Friday after the Celtics game when Joel came out and, he was talking to us in the media after in the press conference room after the game. And he basically said that he's content with the way that things are. He's happy with the roster as currently constructed. He doesn't feel any urgency to get things done. And to me, that really just came off as a cosign for the Sixers, patient approach to this whole thing. I think if Joel had came out and said, listen, I'm out here putting up 30 and 15 every night, I need some help, something needs to be done, maybe that would make the Sixers feel compelled to make a move. But with Joel basically co-signing the patient process that they have, I really think that that would be the one thing that would make them feel like they had to make a move. And if he's not putting any pressure on them, which he's obviously not doing publicly, and I've been told he's also not doing privately, behind the scenes, that makes me think that there's a real chance that this thing does stretch past the deadline and into the offseason.
Yeah, Michael, that's something that I don't know that got talked about a lot because it kind of happened on like a Friday during the football, during the playoffs. But, Embiid, explained to the listeners, essentially was asked, and he said no urgency to change, and then he kind of documented why.
Yeah, exactly. He said, when he's healthy and the team is healthy, they have, I forget the exact number, maybe 22-9, 23-9, something like that, in terms of their record, which he said stacks up along with the best records of teams in the league. He pointed to the fact that, that he had to miss 3 weeks with COVID. They've had players in and out of the roster, but he feels like when they're at or near full strength, even without Ben out there, is currently constructed, that they have, a real chance to compete with anybody. And with the way he's been playing, it's kind of hard to disagree with him on that.
Yeah, Michael Kasky-Blomane, CBS Sports, covers the NBA. Sixers lose yesterday on MLK Day. The Sixers a little lifeless yesterday. But, Michael, I thought maybe two of their better efforts and maybe one of their most impressive wins of the season in Miami on Saturday. Michael, we got you?
Shit.
Well, we lost MKB, it sounds like there, and we'll see if we can try to reconnect with him here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Michael Kasky-Blomane, of course, covers the NBA for CBS Sports, and one of the things that he wrote about is the whole thing with Joel Embiid, and what Joel Embiid was saying, which was essentially, hey, I don't think we need more help. He basically says, hey, I think that we have enough going on right now, so I'll bring MKB back into the conversation. And I was bringing up the point, Michael, is what Joel said comes after that Friday night game against Boston. I thought they played very well in Boston, but maybe had their most impressive win of the season in the back-to-back in Miami.
Yeah, definitely, Mike. I think both of those games, obviously the Celtics haven't had the best season, but, there's still always a rivalry with Philadelphia. And I thought those two games, and especially in Miami, Jimmy Butler was back. Kyle Lowry was out there. That's a place that's really hard to play. I thought the Sixers played really well. They were down, obviously, by double figures in that third quarter. And then midway through and into the fourth quarter, they showed, it wasn't just Joel. Seth Curry was stepping up, hitting some shots. Tobias Harris was making some plays. And for me, that's the recipe for the Sixers to have success as currently constructed. I think if you see a game like yesterday where it was very clear that, Joel was doing so much of the heavy lifting, Tobias was, nowhere to be found. Seth wasn't getting up a lot of shots. Maxey was, good, but not great. I think in games like that, it's hard for the Sixers to really pull out a win. But when Joel is playing like he's playing and he's getting, legitimate help from a couple of the guys around him, the Sixers can really compete with anyone in my eyes.
All right, MKB, some NBA news and notes. The Kevin Durant injury, how does that change everybody's outlook in the East?
Yeah, that's huge, Mike. Well, first of all, I think it drops Kevin out of the the MVP race, which is probably good for Joel. Unfortunate for Durant, obviously, because I think he was a top one or two guy in that race in my eyes. But also, I think the Nets are going to have a really hard time. They've already dropped down to third in the conference after being in the top seed for the first couple months. And I think they're just going to have a really hard time staying above water without Durant for potentially up to 2 months. Obviously, Kyrie's back for away games, but we saw a game like yesterday in Cleveland that him and James Harden, that it wasn't quite enough to get a win. So I think there's a real chance we see the Nets drop down, potentially 4th, 5th, or maybe even 6th in the East before Durant comes back, which could really work to obviously shake up the standings heading into the playoffs.
MKB, what's up with local guy Frank Vogel and the Lakers? 22-22. Obviously, they are really struggling out there.
Yeah, they've been pretty ugly to watch, Mike. If you've seen any of their games this season, they just look disjointed on both ends of the floor. I think there was a lot of concern that could be the case coming into the season. But, Frank, I don't think has done a great job with, kind of integrating the new parts, whether that's Westbrook or some of the other guys they brought in. And he's basically, according to reports from The Athletic now, is kind of coaching for his job. He's on the hot seat on, almost like a game-by-game basis is the way the report made it sound, which is not a great place to be for a head coach, having to look over your shoulder after every game. So that's definitely going to be a storyline to keep an eye on for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I think that whole thing there. You trade for Westbrook, and now you're going to blame the coach. That is bizarre to me.
You know how it is, though, Mike. The coach is always the scapegoat, the first guy to fall. There's not really anything they can do with Russ at this point. No team is going to trade for him, so they're kind of stuck with that roster they have now. And if they don't think that Frank is doing the best job for it, perhaps they'll look and bring someone else in that they think could do better.
MKB, you are given a pair of tickets to go see a player in the league right now. Who are you picking?
The first name that popped to my head, Mike, is Ja Morant, who is coming to Philly at the end of this month for the first time this season, which I'll, definitely be in attendance for. But to me, he's been, as they say, like the league pass team or the league pass guy to watch. I find myself putting on Memphis, almost every night that they have a game just to watch, his athleticism and his growth as a player. So to me, it would be Ja. He's been super fun to watch this season.
All right, All-Star game coming up in a couple of weeks. The All-Star voting. You should see Joel Embiid back in the All-Star game. He's been unbelievable. You can see the Sixers tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN, taking on the Orlando Magic. They'll play the Lakers on Friday, by the way, and you can hear both games on 97.3. MKB, take care, my man.
All right, Mike, thanks. You too.
That's Michael Kasky-Blomain from CBS Sports, kind enough to join us here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill, and, of course, coming up in the next hour, it's Football at 4. Andrew DeCecco's breakdown of what happened and what's next for the Eagles in their loss. Plus, we'll take a look at the divisional round games as well. Tuesday with Thompson, the PT, will join us coming up at 5 o'clock tonight. We'll go over all the NFL with Rob Monty from the Associated Press. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and you can message us through the app on your phone. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on the YouTube channel. Just launch the YouTube app on your smartphone, laptop, or tablet, or the smart TV in your home. You can watch the show right there. Just say 97.3 ESPN or launch YouTube and search 973 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. It's brought to you by Jenkins & Sons for heating and air conditioning installation, service and maintenance, plumbing and drain cleaning service. Go to jenkinsandson.com. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. That includes the playoffs at Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Andrew DeCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is set to join us here. Take a look back at what happened and what's next. The draft, of course, is right in Andrew's wheelhouse. Looking forward to the draft conversation we'll be having. But first, let's take a look back at what happened on Sunday, some of the things that were surprising and stood out. Andrew, what's happening, man?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
All right, bud. Well, it didn't go their way, and I guess the big thing was, I don't want to say I'm surprised they lost the game. I think that was something we all expected. But were you surprised at how handily Tampa Bay was able to defeat Philadelphia?
Yes, I thought that it was going to be a more closely contested game. I thought the Eagles were going to be really competitive, at least through the third quarter, and then Tampa Bay probably would pull through at the end. I mean, I had the Tampa Bay Bucks winning 27-24 on my scouting report on InsideTheBirds.com. Look, they got thoroughly outclassed by a superior team. The Eagles had to play a flawless and a perfect game against the Bucks if they wanted a chance to win. They couldn't afford a slow start, which I wrote about in my observations piece, and they're able to get away with that against the Giants and Washington and some of those teams and the Jets. But you can't. That's not going to work against some of the upper echelon teams in the NFL. You have to be perfect, and the Eagles certainly weren't, and it cost them. They weren't built to play from behind and have to take to the aerial attack and lean on that aspect of their game offensively, and that's what they had to do, and they sort of got exploited in that regard.
Yeah, I know one of the things we were kind of talking about on Thursday when you were on was Dallas Goedert and, getting him a lot of targets. They were able to do so, and he had a pretty good game, but why did it really not impact the game all that much? What was Tampa able to do to kind of get him out while the game was early?
Well, they keyed on him early, and they keyed on Devontae Smith. The Eagles' passing game is very easy to defend when you know that it's only going to two guys, and those are the two X factors that you have to account for. And I think most teams are willing to take their chances with the Jalen Reagors, Quez Watkins, Greg Wards of the world to, we'll see if they can beat us and take away Goddard and Smith. And that's been the blueprint. I mean, you saw the Giants have success doing that, and that really was the blueprint in how to slow the Eagles' passing attack, get Jalen Hurts out of the pocket. They had him going to throwing off balance and really just skittish in the pocket, which is really a steady regression, a significant regression from what we've seen development-wise over the latter part of the season. He really reverted back to that erratic passer, rushing his reads, dropping his eyes, poor ball placement. I mean, he looked very much just in disarray and like a quarterback making his first postseason start. And the Buccaneers took advantage of that. And, you say what you will, but the Eagles got their experience, but, at what cost, right? I mean, I think that they really, they just got outclassed from pillar to post.
Well, that's a good point you bring up. And we were talking about this earlier in the hour before you jumped on here, Andrew, in that, making the playoffs, it opens up a lot of eyes. Is it a good thing in your opinion? Like, I think it's a good thing that you got, not a good thing that you got whipped, but it shows you how far you are. And it almost helps you plan for your offseason better because you could really now get a good indication. All right, we are this far away from these type of teams, as opposed to not making the playoffs and thinking that you're closer than you are, if you just miss. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I also think losing in the manner in which they did, where it wasn't particularly close, as a franchise, okay, we need to make wholesale changes here, and what we have, the product that we currently have, isn't good enough to contend with some of the superior teams in the NFL. So now they're able to take a step back and assess what they have, where they want to go, what needs to be bolstered, who's in, who's out, and really start to make some big changes instead of tinkering with the roster, making minor changes should that have been a closer affair. I think that now that they see how wide the gap truly was from Tampa Bay and some of those teams and where the Eagles currently are.
One of the things you wrote about at InsideTheBirds.com getting ready for this game was Kenny Gainwell against the Bucs 7. And you thought, hey, get a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. The Bucs really didn't go front 7. They went front 8 and 9, and they basically said, you're not going to run. But were you surprised they didn't utilize the backs out of the backfield? And I felt like that's something they didn't do enough of all season long.
Yeah, that was really shocking considering the amount of pressure that a Todd Bowles defense puts on quarterbacks. And Jalen Hurts making his first postseason start, you would think that he's going to be under duress and there's going to be a lot going on, and his processing might not be what it needs to be in that first start. There's always that chance that he could revert back to some of the erratic passing tendencies that he showed in the early part of the season. So that said, you have to find a way to sort of plan against that or plan for that and have outlet receivers coming open and the running backs and Kenny Gainwell. Boston Scott's been was really underutilized in that area as well. To get those guys and able to catch the ball in short area and take advantage of their explosiveness and ability to sort of, pick up yards and move the chains. And I don't think that they did a good job, particularly in the early goings of that game. I thought that it just lacked rhythm and sustainability. And that really set the tone for the game. It never for 1 second felt like the Eagles were in this game.
Andrew DeCecco, InsideTheBirds.com. This is Football at 4. Rob Gronkowski, 5 catches, 31 yards. He only had 6 targets. If I were to tell you at the beginning, you would say, hey, they did a good job on Gronk, but they didn't do a good job against the rest of the offense. So how were they able to kind of take Gronk out, but then where were the other breakdowns?
I thought they really keyed and they bracketed Gronk, which was the key player to take away. I mean, tight ends have killed the Eagles by and large all season long. But, the thing with Tampa Bay and the thing with Tom Brady is he makes the most out of his roster and what he has as far as weaponry. And it doesn't matter who's out there. He finds a way to put them in position to be successful. So he can dissect any defense with the Scotty Miller, with the Tyler Johnson, with of course, with the Mike Evans. But, I mean, you have all these ancillary players that he's able to win with as well. And you saw that it was really a group effort, and he was just really picked apart the short to intermediate area of the field once again with little resistance. And, you take away Gronk and he'll find a way to beat you. It was more of a death by 1,000 cuts approach this time.
Yeah, it was. And that's John Gannon. I want to get your opinion on the job Gannon did because, Andrew, if I said on Thursday when we had a conversation, hey, Andrew, they're going to get 4 sacks, hold Tampa to 7 punts, would you have felt good about the outcome?
Yeah, I mean, I would have, because getting pressure on Tom Brady is key. However, the pressure didn't come until later, Mike. So Brady, by that point, the Eagles were already in a hole, and they're not a type of team that really is going to thrive playing from behind, especially against a team like Tampa Bay that can score in bunches, and they're just a better team. They're stronger, they're faster, they're more fundamentally sound and disciplined in every aspect in all 3 phases of the game. So what happened was the defense got off to a slow start, much like the offense, and the special teams also did not do the team any favors. And by the time they found their footing, the game was, for all intents and purposes, it was out of reach already. Mm-hmm. And nice to see Ryan Kerrigan come alive and for the first time all season. I don't think anybody could have predicted that, but it was almost like too little, too late. It was good to see the pass rush get home, but it was, it didn't really seem to matter at that point.
Yeah, and I know that we had talked on Thursday about some of the matchups, and you're trying to get some interior push. You had Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave up against the interior to get that interior push from Brady, and it just seems that was something. They did not win that battle in the middle of the defensive front.
No, they didn't. I thought Alex Capa, the right guard, Ryan Jensen, Ali Marpet, I thought that they go into the game, that's one of the strongest interiors in football, and they really lived up to the billing. And going against Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox and being able to sort of stonewall them for much of the game, I think that's really impressive and really proves how stout they truly are. And for them to be able to not generate any sort of push up the middle was, that really, I think that really was one of the early deciding factors of that game, because Brady was able to just stand in there, wasn't really moved off his mark, and able to scan the field and pick apart that Jonathan Gannon secondary. And, that was really what many anticipated was going to happen. And sure enough, that's how it played out.
We're talking a lot about the, what happened in that game. And obviously you take a look at, the offense and the defense, but obviously the special teams play with Rager and the fumble there. And he's just this whole other topic that kind of, unfolds based on his lack of production. And I don't know about you. I know it was 17-0. They had a chance to score. He throws an interception. They get a stop. They hold him. They get a 3-and-out. They get the punt. He fumbles the punt. When they got the fumbled punt and then went down and scored to make it 24-0, that to me, the fumbled muffed punt was the most deflating part of that whole game, because you're still only down 17-0 with the ball at midfield. If you can somehow get points, you're back in that game. That fumbled punt to me was the difference in that game.
Yeah, it was that one, and you can also argue the interception, obviously before the half, that ill-fated pass that Mike Edwards made a tremendous read and an interception on. But yeah, that fumbled punt was more of was pretty much a microcosm of Jalen Rager's season.
Yep.
He's cost this team football games, and he cannot. I think the fact that he continuously got chances really showed and revealed the lack of resource that the Eagles had at the position, that they had to keep trotting him out there. Obviously, his first-round pedigree played a large part in that. But when you have a player like that that's costing you games and is clearly ineffective in every role that you throw at him, and you really try to shoehorn him in the offense, really wasn't able to find any sort of functionality or a role. I mean, the fact that he kept getting snaps was very telling in what they had. And I think they really need to look at what he is, what he can be, and if you realize that, you might have to cut your losses because, and first of all, and I also have to say that his body language and his overall demeanor and route running and effort was absolutely poor. Mm-hmm. And that really stood out to me. And that's something that I noticed in college when things weren't necessarily going his way, but I also noticed it as a rookie and this season as well. And, it's just a bad look, the bad demeanor and the bad body language. It doesn't really, it goes against everything that they have culture wise, and it goes against everything that the offense was really looking to build and the team's looking to build. So, I mean, it just, he doesn't really bring an awful lot to the table at this moment.
No, and if you watch a lot of the All-22, I mean, he can't get off the line. I mean, Tampa Bay showed you exactly what they thought of him. They manned him up on the outside, and it reminded me of the Ricky Manning Jr. game. I mean, they threw him around like a rag doll. He just could not get off the line of scrimmage. And, you wonder how much that hurts the development of Hurts when one of his targets is out of the play from Jump Street.
Yeah, and that's something that needs to be taken into account when you look at Jalen Hurts' performance. A lot of it was mechanical and issues that Jalen's going to have to work on in the offseason. And some of it was due to a guy out there he really handicaps the offense significantly. He's Jalen Hurts or Jalen Rager out there, and Quez Watkins. There was a point in the game where it became obvious that he slowed up on a route. Like, guys can't be doing that. Like, the quarterback needs to know exactly where the receiver is going to be on that given play, so that he has the confidence to see it and throw it. And it seems like the only receiver that he has that 100% surefire confidence in is Devontae Smith. Mm-hmm. And I think that needs to be addressed in the offseason. I think they really need to pair a veteran receiver, such as maybe an Allen Robinson, opposite Devontae Smith to really help balance out the passing attack and give another option for the offense.
What did you think, Andrew, of the way that Smith was involved, or the lack of involvement of Devontae Smith? What does that say about the offense and how they didn't get him involved? There was, the broadcast, Aikman was just besides himself that they didn't get him involved in the offense. What did you see?
Well, frankly, I think some of it has to do with the quarterback just not seeing it. He had predetermined reads, and he delivered, and that was what he was going to do. Devontae Smith got open in that game, early in that game as well. Quez Watkins, for that matter, got open a number of times, and Jalen just didn't see him. He wasn't seeing the field very well at all, and he left plays on the field. So, I think that he could have had a much larger role rather than I guess it was 4 catches for 60 yards. That was the final stat line. He could have had a much bigger game had Jalen been able to see him and get him the ball, I mean, even that touchdown, that would be touchdown before the half, he was open on that play. And if Jalen hadn't hesitated and pulled the trigger a little quicker, that would have been a touchdown.
Correct.
And, things like that was what Devontae Smith was doing with regularity.
All right, well, then I agree with you. It's a good breakdown. Andrew DeCecco, then I'll ask you this. I mean, I would imagine, Andrew, and you can tell me if you disagree or if I'm wrong, that the entire offensive line will return. The tight end would be the same. The running back would be the same. The quarterback would be the same. Smith, you're essentially bringing back the entire offense. So I guess that really strongly suggests that Howie Roseman has to go get multiple wide receivers as the addition. Because would you agree that the offensive line and the rest of the offense is going to literally be exactly the same?
Yeah, I have to think that Jason Kelsey's not going to want to go out on that type of note. Losing that game, having 2 penalties in which he only had 1 all season against the Raiders. I mean, that's not the way that a player of his caliber is going to want to go out. He's an intense competitor. So that would be the only question mark. And I think that he'll be back. And then you have to look at the wide receiver position needs to be overhauled. You have to add more playmakers, bigger body guys that can really win in contested catch situations and in the red zone. The tight end is going to be the same. You could add a more sustainable backup that can really contribute. I don't know that Jack Stoll is a tight end 2 on most teams. Tyree Jackson's more of a projection at this point. Remember, he's coming off injury. That's going to delay his offseason progression. And I think running back wise, Jordan Howard, you could probably get him back on a low cost. You could, or he might, he's a guy that's practice squad. I mean, he's not really going to probably go anywhere, but I think you need to upgrade the second running back spot as well if you're really nitpicking and splitting hairs. But the wide receiver position is glaringly needs to be retooled.
Defensively, a lot of changes I would anticipate. Let's start. Both safeties are free agents. You bringing either back?
No. I think you just need to start over on that position and get younger. And
Agreed.
even if you get one of them, even if you get a 1 in the draft and 1 in free agency, you could also roll with Marcus Epps at one spot and get a rookie in there and maybe a developmental player and start to really revamp that position, because getting these Band-Aids on the position is not going to help the defense be equipped for long-term success.
Which is,
so I would get 2 new safeties.
That's a good point. The Band-Aid, because that's what they did. That's all they could afford this offseason was essentially to get Band-Aids. Steve Nelson, Anthony Harris, Eric Wilson, they were just 1-year guys. That being said, Nelson, are you going back down? I would imagine corner has got to be a target with one of those 3 picks, right?
Yeah, I would go corner. I mean, a guy who I really like, and not to put the wagon before the horse, but I like Andrew Booth. Obviously, Sauce Gardner's another guy, but Andrew Booth's my guy in the first round, and I think that he's going to be there for the taking. And pairing him with Darius Slay is awfully enticing if you're Howie Roseman, I would have to think. So that's a position that needs to be addressed as well.
I guess linebacker, they did sign Edwards. Singleton is a restricted free agent, I believe, but is this the year? They got 3. Did they finally take a guy in the first round?
Well, they're going to have they have 3 chances to. I still think it's going to be, I still don't think it's going to happen in the first round, but I think that they know. I mean, you would hope that this year was yet another example of what they need to do. You hope Jonathan Gannon has a say if he's still remains the Eagles defensive coordinator, if he's not a head coach next year. You hope that they ask him, what do you need to be successful?
Yep.
And what kind of players are you looking for to ultimately run the scheme that you're looking to implement here? And hopefully they're able to do that and land some of the players and see what he's really able to do and the innovation he's able to do as a coordinator, if he's able to do that.
Now, I know Andrew and I are going to be talking a lot of draft. We're going to get down and dirty for the next couple of months with this, but my prediction on January 18th, Andrew, is that they will finally draft a linebacker in round 1. 3 picks. They got 3. I don't know if they'll make all 3, but I think this is finally the year. I think the league is just changing in that direction. Their philosophy was based on a different style of league, right?
You would think so. You would think that you see all these teams and they have these dynamic second-level players and guys that can do so many different things. And you see a tight end like Gronkowski, and you look at your personnel, and you're like, we don't have anyone equipped to stop this guy. Well, adding a player that's sort of like that hybrid and very fluid and good in coverage and, being able to – and rangy, that's what you need to sort of defend against these type of players. So you think that maybe this is the year. I don't know. I mean, two players that I have circled right now as primary options would have to be George Karlaftis from Purdue, the edge rusher, and Andrew Booth, the corner from Clemson.
Yeah. Well, we obviously have a lot. Let me real quick, this year's draft class, you got Devonta Smith. Are you comfortable that he is a number one wideout, or do you look to find a guy to make him your number two?
That's tough because I think that he has the qualities and the makings of a number one wide receiver, but need to add, he's a volume guy and someone that I can foresee, being an 80 catch a season type of player. That said, he needs a Robin to his Batman, right? And I think that when you look at someone like an Allen Robinson as someone that could step up and be that guy, I also think that they're going to have to look to the draft yet again to retool that position. And it's got to be a bigger bodied guy because right now, when you look at the roster, it's built with speedy, quick twitch finesse guys. And that's not really that doesn't lend itself well to some of the more physical corners, the secondaries that they're going to face if they want to advance in the postseason.
That is going to be interesting to see what they do at wide receiver this offseason. Free agent, draft, which direction do they go? Landon Dickerson, obviously, we thought he did a good job. Got Kenny Gainwell. They found a good one there. McPherson probably didn't see enough of. But overall, a lot of these draft picks got a chance to play. So I guess that gives you some positive vibes that this year's draft was pretty good. The previous year's draft has helped out.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I wrote about in my 10 observations as a bonus point, where the Eagles got contributions from virtually every single player that they drafted last year. And they all have different ceilings and what they're probably going to be able to do, but they all have a long-term upside in some capacity. Obviously, I think Milton Williams is an interesting player next season when they look at defensive end. Is that where you want to put him and start to retool that position and count him as one of them? Or do you want to make him a long-term fixture on the inside? And Kenny Gainwell, I think, is going to have an elevated role next season. Zach McPherson's a special teams ace. So, I mean, and Teron Jackson, I think Marlon Tuipulotu is going to take a step forward this year and be prominent rotational pieces on the defensive line. So, yeah, I mean, they have to be pleased with what they've got, particularly on day 2 and 3. Where that's sort of you're sort of rolling the dice in some of those later picks.
Is it April yet? April, the draft will be here. We'll be talking about it. Andrew DeCecco, DeCecco NFL. He's back on Thursday. We'll take a look at the divisional round matchups and more on the Eagles offseason, all offseason long here on Football at 4. Andrew, now I'm really excited about this offseason. I can't wait to talk to you throughout it, man.
You got it, man. We'll have plenty to talk about.
We sure will. Andrew DeCecco right there, guys. Check his work out over at InsideTheBirds.com. And the Inside the Birds podcast brings you Football at 4. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. That's Andrew DeCecco, and he's back on Thursday. Adam Kaplan will be here tomorrow. We'll get Adam's take on the game, the offseason. This is that week that kind of sets you up for what's ahead. The offseason's here for the Eagles, not for everybody. Here's the thing. John Gannon interviewed today, I believe, with the Houston Texans, tomorrow with the Denver Broncos, Minnesota Vikings. He's got 3 interviews. So the Eagles really don't know what their defensive coordinator spot looks like moving forward right now. John Gannon is in limbo. That's something to keep an eye on. And quite frankly, you might not like John Gannon, but I think it's a big loss to go from Schwartz to Gannon to then find another coordinator. I would rather have Gannon be the second-year coordinator with guys that he once before I give up on him. That's just me. I know people are ready to go to door number 3 already. Cole from LBI says, man, I'm getting excited hearing Andrew talk draft. He seemed to have great analysis of the upcoming prospects. I would love to get a look at his draft board. You know, Andrew has been with us for a couple of years now for Football at 4. And while we love talking in-season football with Andrew and the breakdown, and he's really good with matchups, he's excellent on the draft. Excellent when it comes to the draft. So there is an asset that we have that nobody else has. That's Andrew on Tuesdays and Thursdays. 4 o'clock right here, Football at 4, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill, and this is the Sports Bash. Hey, if you're watching the show live, leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know where you're watching from. We always like to see where you guys are watching from. LAC 215 says Rieger looked like he was playing bad on purpose. That's a new one. I don't think he was playing bad on purpose, LAC 215. I think he stinks. I don't think I just think he's – look, some guys have a lot of talent. Mentally, they're not strong enough. I don't think Rieger is strong enough mentally. I don't think he thinks he belongs, and that's a problem. I think Rieger is at the point where he doesn't think he belongs. He is waiting for the coach to say, come on, coach, get me out of here. That's a problem. Bleach is watching the show. He says he struggles throwing on his left side as well, same as Hurts. I think you're talking about Andy Dalton. Either him or Trubisky, one of those two. Anthony Allen's watching the show. We have to hit 3 home runs with these 3 draft picks, point blank. I don't know if you got to hit all 3. You got to get 2 out of 3. You need 2 starters, Pro Bowl players with those 2. The third guy, you hope he's a starter. You can't expect to hit on all 3 picks. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. 4:33. All right. Who's in, who's out is out. I'm going to give you my power rankings for the 8 teams remaining. All right. These are the 8 teams from 8 to 1 on who's left in the playoffs. Tomorrow I'll do the quarterbacks. Thursday I'll do the coaches as we've done each round. Today, these are the 8 teams. Now, I told you last week my 14th coach was McCarthy. That proved to be right. My 13th coach was Bisaccia. He's gone. Sirianni was 11. He's out. So the coaches at the bottom of the barrel, Kingsbury, I think I had 10. He's a goner. So all the coaches I had at the bottom of the barrel, the bad coaches are losing. The only one that was at number 1 was Belichick. I think his resume speaks for himself. So him being number 1, don't sit here and say, well, you had Belichick 1. I think for the most part, we nailed the guys who were the worst coaches.
At the end of the day, like you said, Belichick's resume speaks for itself. If you didn't have Belichick 1, we'd have a conversation.
Yeah.
Also,
McCarthy.
Belichick himself didn't lose the game by himself.
I got a
Saturday
prediction. McCarthy's getting fired.
Will Dan Quinn be the next coach?
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think Quinn wants to leave there. I think Quinn was pretty devastated when he got fired from Atlanta, and now, like, he doesn't want to just go jump to another team.
He was pretty excited that one game he filled in as an interim coach.
No, but I think he likes the Dallas situation. And guess what? Here's the problem. I don't understand why these teams don't understand this, okay? When you hire a head coach, which head coaches are known for more for X's and O's than they are for being motivators, culture setters, leader of men? Those are the guys who succeed. You bring a guy in because he's boy wonder and some X and O wizard, those guys typically don't make it. You bring in a guy who's this really smart defensive mind, those guys typically don't make it. You need, like, John Harbaugh is not some X and O wizard. He's a really good head coach because he manages the whole team. Dan Quinn's going to get hired by somebody, and guess what? I got news for that team. Micah Parsons ain't coming with them.
Right.
So if you think Dan Quinn's going to come and then all of a sudden your defense is going to have this new identity, Dan Quinn's defense stunk in Atlanta. You know why? He had lousy talent there. They had a good defense the year they went to the Super Bowl, but after that, not so good. In fact, he got fired because his defense sucked. Dan Quinn's going to get hired, and that team, I don't understand how people don't understand. Like, these guys run teams. Hey, let's bring Dan Quinn in. He did a really good job in Dallas. Yeah, he had freaking Micah Parsons. That guy's not coming with them. The team that hires Dan Quinn, they're going to be firing him in 2 years and saying, what were we doing? So I think Dallas would be smart. First off, they got to fire McCarthy. That's one. Now, there's a lot of options in this cycle that I'm intrigued by, especially for Dallas. I think Brian Flores would be a great hire for Dallas. Why? He's a disciplinarian kind of guy. He's not an X and O guy. He's a culture setter. They need a new culture there. The problem is Jerry Jones would not hire Brian Flores because
the players would like him.
He would be great there. And they need someone like him. Why? Their talent level is going to start to dip. They have too much money wrapped into the running back. That was a disgraceful contract they gave him. And the quarterback, they paid him way too much. So now they're going to have to start letting guys go. The offensive line is a sieve. It's going to start getting old. It's a problem. They've got running back issues because Zeke Elliott's not the same player. I think they're going to let Amari Cooper go because of cap reasons. They're going to have to get rid of him. So now you're going to be down to CeeDee Lamb all by himself. See how that works out when he's the only guy there, as opposed to having Cooper, Lamb, Wilson, Gallup. The tight end's probably going to have to go because of free agency. Gregory might go because of free agency. They got big problems. They need a culture setter. They don't need boy wonder X and O guy. They have that guy, Kellen Moore. He's the boy wonder, right?
Well, you also can find on the boy wonder. I mean, there's not like there's like a dearth of smart offensive coordinators out there. There's much fewer leaders of men.
I don't think they're going to fire Moore.
No, but he might leave for like a head coaching job.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, I'm talking about if they fired McCarthy and just wanted to elevate Quinn, then you have Quinn. He can call the defense still.
Right.
But you would probably have a more disciplined team.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what they need. They need a head coach that is not an X and O guy, that is not this guy that is some boy wonder play caller. They need a guy to set the culture
They
there.
also don't need some blowhard like McCarthy who thinks he's so cool and so smart, and the players are looking at him during Hard Knocks' show this year like, who is this guy and why do we care about anything he's saying?
Well, I mean, he did win a Super Bowl. He does have that. He's won 60% of the games.
Players
he's
didn't
in.
look at him like that. They
Well,
were looking at him
right,
like,
and that's
what is
but
going
that's
on
part
here?
of the problem is he doesn't have that personality where he sets the culture.
He doesn't demand respect.
That's the issue, and that's why they are what they are. That's why I had no problem all season long telling you this team is going to disappoint you because the coach is the worst coach. He was the worst. And it's funny. See, not all Cowboy fans are delusional, irrational. Some are, but not all. We have a guy who works here. He's a Cowboys fan. And you know what he did? He came in here today and said, Mike Gill, you were right. You were right. You told me all along that McCarthy was a problem, and I didn't listen to you, and you were right. And I said, thank you for admitting that, because most of these Cowboy fans out there, they want to blame the refs and all that stuff when every single person, when Tony Romo isn't blaming the refs, he was legitimately cheering for them to win that game, and he's not blaming the refs. You know what the Cowboy fan that works here came in and said? Every one of those penalties, I can't argue with them.
They were justified.
He said they were justified. I wish there were more like that out there. I did say on my social media timeline, there was a lot of Cowboy fans who were giving it to McCarthy over the refs.
They should.
They were. No, I'm saying I give them credit for that.
Let's go. Come on.
But I did say, I give that Cowboy fan a lot of credit. He came in and said, you were right. You told me McCarthy was going to be a problem, and that's why they lost. McCarthy's the problem. My prediction is they will fire McCarthy.
I would love that.
You can you store this moment and say, you said they would fire McCarthy. They will fire McCarthy. He will not be the head coach next season. That's my prediction. I also think Cliff Kingsbury's getting fired.
Really? Now that one I don't see coming.
Yeah.
Why do you think that? Is it because?
Well, I told you Kingsbury's a terrible game manager, but he's that much better than McCarthy.
Right.
You saw last night. He can't make adjustments. He's a one-trick pony. I hated the hire. He's exceeded my expectations of him. I was wrong about him. I thought he'd be a total failure. But he's hit his ceiling. This is all he is. He's a one-trick pony.
See, the problem here is that you have a GM now who fired a guy after 1 year for Kingsbury.
He's been there 3-4 years, though, Kingsbury.
No, hear me out for a sec. Keim brought in Vance Joseph that was there before, I believe? No, it's Steve Wilkes.
Yeah, Vance Joseph's the defensive coordinator there now.
Right. Wilkes was there before. They brought him in for 1 year. They drafted Josh Rosen. They fire Wilkes. They hire Kingsbury. They trade Rosen. They draft Murray.
That all worked out.
It worked out for the most part, but if you're going to fire Kingsbury now, isn't that basically a statement that you basically didn't go down the right road? You messed up somewhere?
Well, no, they've been together for 3 or 4 seasons now. How much is their third year together?
Yes.
So I think it is, hey, you brought us down the right road, but you're only good enough to get us so far. I think somebody else has to take us to the next level. I thought Kingsbury would be a disaster. He's exceeded my expectations. I'll give him his props there, but he's still not. He's not a game man. He doesn't know how to call timeouts. He doesn't know how to run the clock. He has no adjustments in his offense whatsoever. When they lost Hopkins, they completely had no plan.
Right.
They had no plan last night. They're just telling Murray to run around. Just run around and make something happen. They had no plan without Hopkins. They were a disaster when he went out. And the only team they beat was Dallas. Why? Because Dallas has a bigger buffoon on the sideline.
Literally and figuratively.
I think they both get fired. That's my prediction. If I had to pick one or the other on who will get fired, McCarthy, I'm almost telling you definitively will get fired.
That one I can definitely see.
Yeah.
I just had trouble wrapping my head around Kingsbury. That's all.
All right, here's my power rankings of the 8 remaining teams in the NFL. Number 8, the Cincinnati Bengals. And I say that with a lot of admiration because my biggest takeaway of the weekend was that Cincinnati's here for the long haul. I think they're going to be good for 10 years now, this team. You're going to look at the Bengals. They're going to be a legitimate playoff team now. They're going to be the new team in that AFC North. They will be the Pittsburgh Steelers for the next 10 years, where they are in because of the quarterback.
And you also have more faith in the head coach than the guy who was there previously in Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, I'm not sold 100% on Taylor, but I'm willing. I mean, he's young. He makes mistakes.
He's shown you more.
He's more of the boy wonder of the X's and O's than he is the leader of men. But guess what? He's got the quarterback to do it. That's the difference. When I talk about it's hard to find the elites, that's why they're called the 1%ers. They got one. They got a 1%er. That dude's legit. For them to win 10 games with that offensive line, that guy's pretty damn good. So Cincinnati, even though they're number 8, they're on the rise. Number 7 is Tennessee. I hate to say it because I like that team a lot. They just lack the firepower. I don't think they're great defense. They're not good enough defensively is my, with what Henry are we going to get? I think Henry's going to be fine. I know a lot of people are worried. He's not playing in that game if he's not 100%. He sat out the whole year. He's not coming back like, hey, guys, I'm 48%. I mean, if he's playing, it's because he's ready to go.
Well, I mean, your definition of 100% may not be someone else's, though. I don't think Henry's going out there if he's injured, obviously, still, but he may just not be fully Derrick Henry because of conditioning and a variety of other reasons.
Possible, but I'm going to go off the anticipation that you're going to say, hey, he got 178 yards after not playing for 15 weeks. He looks pretty damn good.
I mean, if he gets 178 yards, they win.
I think they are going to win. In the end, I think that's why I have them 7 and Cincinnati 8.
The ironic thing is the two teams that are playing each other are bottom of your list.
Yeah, I think those two teams get knocked out in the next round. Number 6, I've got San Francisco. I like this team. The quarterback's the problem there. I mean, ultimately, you're waiting for the interception, and they got some injury issues on defense. Is Bosa going to play? That worries me there. They're number 6. 5 is Tampa. They're too banged up for me, man. I mean, the line, if Worcester doesn't play, they're in big trouble if he doesn't play against the Rams. I mean, they couldn't barely block Philadelphia. What are you going to do with Aaron Donald and Von Miller and
Jensen's
that crew?
not healthy either. Even if he plays, he's banged up.
Yeah. So I got right now Tampa 5. I got the Rams 4, and I'm not a big Rams guy. They impressed me last night. Now, Arizona stinks. Their line stinks. They have no second gear without Hopkins, but their defense had no answers for the Rams last night. None. And the Rams only threw the ball, 17 times last night? They couldn't stop the run. So it'll be interesting to see now if the Rams open it up against Tampa. I would imagine they have to throw the ball. So this will be interesting. Can Matthew Stafford pass them to win? He didn't have to pass them to the win last night. They ran the ball a lot last night. They're going to have to put more in Stafford's lap. But talent-wise right now, the Rams, I think, are just in a better spot than Tampa. So I got Rams 4, Tampa 5, Buffalo 3. They looked great the other night. And we thought this was a Super Bowl team early in the season. They fell off a little bit. They got better late, and they really looked good last week. Josh Allen, man, talking about the 1%ers. He's putting himself into that 1% category because some of these older guys are going to be gone, so somebody else is going to have to be the 1%. Him and Burrow might be the next group of Brady and Rodgers. Speaking of 1%ers, number 2 is Kansas City with Mahomes and that crew, and number 1 is Green Bay. Now, I probably should flip them. I feel like I should flip them, but Green Bay with the bye, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt with the bye there and Kansas City having the extra game. So I'm going to go if they play Kansas City slightly, but Kansas City doesn't stop the run, and that's a big problem for me with some of the teams that are left here.
I mean, you could argue that the Packers are the healthier team of those two because they had the bye week. They had more time.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because they had the bye.
They're hoping that Alexander's back this weekend.
Sports Bash this hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. We'll recap some of the NFL playoffs next hour. Rob Motti will join us here at 5:30. Interesting piece I saw today on why branding matters. It has to do with the Cowboys and how irrelevant they've really been. More Sports Bash on the way. All right, 4:53 next hour. It's a Tuesday with Thompson. The PT will be here. So I saw this article today. It's over at Barrett Sports Media. They were talking about proof that marketing works. And it really has to do with the Dallas Cowboys here. Said, why do people still hate the Cowboys? Give me a good football reason that the Cowboys are worth your time. I get there was an era in the NFL was Mortal Kombat. The Cowboys were Shang Tsung, and those days have ended decades ago. It's 2022. There are adults in their late 20s that have never seen a Cowboys championship. Since 2000, think about these things I'm about to say to you, Josh. Since the year 2000, the Dallas Cowboys have been to the playoffs fewer times than the Atlanta Falcons. They have won as many playoff games as the Jacksonville Jaguars. So essentially, they're saying how useless it is. And I bring this point up a lot all the time to Eagles fans. I could care less about the Cowboys. I have been Eagles Giants is, to me, the big one. I could care less about Dallas. To me, they're irrelevant.
The Giants have been in more Super Bowls in the last 20 years than the Cowboys have playoff wins.
Correct. They have been the more successful team. Now, not recently in terms of the last 5 years, but we're talking about in the last 22 years. The Jacksonville Jaguars have won as many playoff games as Dallas. But he talks about in the article about the reason why is simple. It's marketing the product. And that's why, like, if you're a business out there that doesn't advertise, think about the advertisers and you hear their jingles and you hear things. That's the Cowboys. The whole, how about them Cowboys? You could say that when they win.
Say when they lose.
Say when they lose. The whole point of this article is interesting too, is if it was really about hating the best team, that you would hate the New England Patriots. Instead, you hate this team, most people do, that hasn't won anything in 27 years.
I feel like AFC fans hate them more than NFC fans, the Pats. NFC fans seem to hate the Cowboys.
That's an interesting article. It was well written, too, by the way. And when we come back, it's a Tuesday with Thompson. The PT is in the house. All right, Sports Bash, final hour of the show. We are cruising. I told you in the beginning of the show I had so many things I wanted to get to today and not enough time. The operative word time, I don't have enough of it. That doesn't mean I'm going to take an extra hour of your time. I'm only doing one more hour, and that's it for me. But we're going to start that hour with the PT. Pete Thompson on a Tuesday with Thompson set to join me right now here on the Sports Bash Live as we do every Tuesday, 5 o'clock. Set your calendars. The PT is here. It's brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City. Closer than you think online, BMWAtlanticCity.com. Hey, Peter.
Hello, Michael. How are you?
I am doing good. I am doing excellent, actually. It's a good day to see you. And, well, unfortunately, the Eagles season has come to a halt.
It's very sad when it comes to a halt. And I've heard some criticism from people that say, like, well, but, what are you saying that you're okay that the Cowboys lost? Like, that was my go-to line on Sunday, that the Eagles lost. They didn't hold up their end of the bargain, but at least the Cowboys lost as well. And I got a lot of people saying, like, worry about your own team. Like, I mean, what are you celebrating some other team's loss for? I mean, come on. I mean, do I have to explain it?
I could care less about that. Yeah, I'm not that guy that says, well, the Eagles lost, but I feel better. That's not
Oh,
me,
I didn't say I felt better. I said it took some of the sting that I felt about the Eagles
feel like
loss.
we were just talking about this before you came on, Pete Thompson. So there was this article that was written about, the whole Dallas thing. And obviously, and it's all a marketing thing. It's a branding thing. They've done a really good job of branding themselves. But the article says, it says there are adults in their late 20s that have never seen the Cowboys. And I would, they haven't won since 96. You can go into people into their 30s who really don't remember them winning a championship. Since the year 2000, the Atlanta Falcons have made the playoffs more than the Cowboys have. They have won as many playoff games as the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I mean, there were so many great, and I love the memes, right? But I mean, there were so many great things out there about season starts, beat up on bad teams, fans get delusional. We dem boys, this is our year, choking the playoffs. Yes. And then repeat. I mean, you could put any team in like that, but I mean, some of that stuff does hold true. And it's not, again, it didn't make me feel better. It just took some of the sting out.
Well, here's the thing.
Not only that they lost, but how they lost. The people that were going crazy, the refs cost them the game. They should move out of the way. Why wouldn't they let, dude, that's football 101. You can't spot your own football.
Yeah. Well, to me, I love the ones that are like, hey, Cowboy fans, don't worry. Yankee season starts. The Duke still has a couple more games left. The Lakers are getting better. Like, those are my favorite ones because, quite frankly, most sports fans don't take Cowboy fans seriously anyway. And that is why I get, so perplexed as to why people give them the attention, because they are so irrelevant and they lack so much sports acumen. Like, how many Cowboys fans do you know that are also Yankees fans or are also every 95% of them are Cowboys, Yankees, Lakers. Like, right there, it tells you all you need to know of what you're dealing with. So
I had a couple people at work that I asked about the Cowboys, and I pressed them a little bit, MG, because I wanted to, listen, if you're a Cowboys fan and you know who Drew Pearson is, I'll accept that. If you're a Cowboys fan and you remember Jay Novacek, I'll accept that. If you could tell me certain games in Cowboys lore, I got no problem with you. The problem I have is, I asked somebody at work last week in anticipation of, or 2 weeks ago in anticipation of the Cowboys game. They said, oh, yeah, the Cowboys are going to beat up on the Eagles. I said, do you even know any of the Cowboys, history? Do you know who the legendary coach was that coached them for many, many years? And the person couldn't answer.
My question,
you mean the guy in the hat?
Yeah, my question is, PT, when do we think, because the Cowboys haven't been good since 96. I mean, realistically, they have three playoff wins since 1996. I mean, that's akin to Jackson. Literally, they are the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's who essentially, they're a better regular season version of the Jaguars. So at what point does the bandwagon group fall apart to where these people know, the younger generation, the teams that hasn't been good ever? So are the younger generation of people growing up fans of a team that essentially has no history of winning while they've been born?
Yeah.
Most of the people who are Cowboys fans now became Cowboys fans because they were winning in the 90s or they were winning in the 70s. So you have a group of people in the 70s that became fans because they were winning, and then that passed it on to their people. And then those people are now fans because they started to win in the 90s, and then that passed it on to their people. Well, they haven't won in almost 30 years now. So is there a generation that has ended this nonsense of we're Cowboy fans?
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is, and I teach high school students, they don't care. They don't care at all. They don't care about the Cowboys, no less they care about the Steelers, no less they care about the Chiefs. I mean, I do have some people. I had one student who came in to show me some of the wagers that he made. I said, "Wait a second, aren't you 17?" He's like, "Mr. Thompson, don't tell anybody." He's listening to your show heavily.
Well, listen. I do feel that the younger generation, and this isn't a knock on them, they're not as into professional sports like we were.
They can't sit for a 3-hour game and be entertained by that. Are you kidding me? And at no point, like commercial breaks. Oh God, and to get them to look up from their phone. And yet I'll ask them like, "Oh, what did you do over your holiday break?" "I watched TikTok videos." All break?
Well, that's the funny part is, that's where they're getting the games. They're not watching full games. They're watching the highlights on Snapchat or TikTok, and that they come, they'll watch that and be like, "Yeah, I saw what happened in the game." But you didn't watch the game. No, I saw the highlights.
Right.
But
and
that's where the whole thing with like the fandom, I feel like at some point this Cowboys thing has to go away. Like the lack of success has to catch up to you at some point. Now, I get the whole, because they bring it on themselves. Here's the problem. They don't understand. They're not very bright. They don't understand that they bring this on themselves because they talk so much about how great they are with zero success. And then the fallback is how many championships they have, which is great. All right. They won a lot of titles before most of us were born. That's tremendous. But they bring all of these like nacho year, the circle of things, all these memes and all this stuff. If you didn't tell us how great you were the whole season, you probably wouldn't get it. And if you had won something in the last 27 years, it might be a little bit more impactful.
Yeah.
But most people nowadays just look at you as just a joke.
Yeah. And you remember that my favorite one was like, and this is at least a decade ago, when they would put up and say the last time the Cowboys won the championships, and they showed like the VHS tapes and the top loading VCR. You know what I mean? Like literally the last time the Cowboys won a Super Bowl, their year-end video was on it. There was no YouTube. Hell, Al Gore hadn't invented the internet yet. It was on a VCR.
Yeah, my buddy sent me one that was like a floppy disk, and it said pictures of the last Super Bowl with Dallas in it. I mean, look, and the article essentially, it's pretty funny because it's an article written for salespeople suggesting that, hey, the power of marketing. This is a team that is completely irrelevant in terms of wins and losses, but they're a business that has marketed itself so well that people still care about whether they win or lose. Now, I'm not one of those people. Like you said, you were happy that they lost on Sunday. Like that helped ease the blow.
Just took a little of the I mean, and I went at some people slightly. I didn't seek them out. I just saw some comments and made some stuff on social media, and they shot back, "Well, your team." And I said, "Look, I never said that my team showed up. Your team was the one that you were tooting the horn, waving the flags, NFC East champions. Oh, we're so good. This year's our year." At no point, in fact, you and I picked the Eagles to lose, right? Our realistic pick on Sunday, when you and I talked on the locker room, was that the Eagles would lose. I didn't think they would lose.
I mean, it was no surprise to. I don't think it was a surprise to most Eagle fans. Now, sure, there's Eagles fans that are like, they're just not real day-to-day Eagles fans. They get excited. They like football, whatever. And they might have been talking like, the Eagles are going to win. But I think if you talk to most people who really understood, the Eagles were not going to win this game. It's not a surprise. Quite frankly, it was a surprise that they made the playoffs. Now, did they deserve to be there? Yes, they earned that playoff spot. But to go from 4 wins to 9, I think they exceeded the expectations of most people this season. That being said, for Dallas, this was their year. The quarterback situation with the contract, the running back is severely overpaid. You've got big problems with the age on the offensive line. You got a lot of injuries up there. The coach, you got questions there. This was their year, and they didn't get it done. That being said, I was only happy that they lost because I had said all week they were going to lose because the coach. I mean, that was you know what I'm saying? Like, I thought McCarthy was going to cost them, and he did.
Yeah, and yet, what was it? Stephen Jones immediately came out and gave him the dreaded vote of confidence, right?
I was going to say, he gave him the dreaded vote of confidence. My prediction, I said this last hour, PT, Mike McCarthy will not be the head coach of that team next year.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah, I do not believe he will be the head coach of that team.
Now, did you predict that Mike Mayock was going to get fired too for talking about all different kind of mics?
I did not. I do find it to be odd because that organization at least felt like it's going in the right direction since he's been there. I don't know that he's done a great job, but they don't feel like a complete disaster.
Yeah.
They were a complete disaster they were like the
forever.
Raiders are the AFC version of the Dallas Cowboys. They are kind of the AFC, branded team. And they had not been relevant for years and years and years. The last 3 years, they've at least been competitive. They made the playoffs this year, and they made the playoffs, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So
I was surprised a little bit by that news, but I guess they want to clean. I mean, and who knows if they're going to keep the interim coach or not, right? I mean, maybe they'll go for GM and coach.
The whole thing now that's going on, I mean, Minnesota is interviewing head coaching candidates. They don't even have a GM now. They are interviewing GM candidates, but, John Gannon's interviewing for the head coaching job. They don't have a GM yet.
I mean, are you as baffled as I am of what are these guys watching that they think Jonathan Gannon is some football genius that should run their football team?
No, and this is why, we were talking about this earlier, all right? Every fan is on this, John Gannon, take him, he sucks, get rid of him, see ya. We live in a society, PT, that you are apparently a bad part of.
Oh.
We always want what's behind door number 2. Everybody wanted Jim Schwartz gone. Well, he's gone, and now you want to go what's behind door number 3. At some point, you have to let these guys, Jim Schwartz, people didn't like him. Why? Because he didn't blitz. They bring a new guy in. You don't like him. Why? Because he doesn't blitz. I would ask you, Pete Thompson, do you think he has any talent on that defensive side of the ball?
Not much.
All right.
It's pretty lean.
So we're going to sit here and blame the guy who has no talent on that side of the ball and say, but you stunk. I think most people looked at – see, this is what I tell people about the head coach. Teams don't look for X and O guys to be the head coach. They look for guys who are leader of men, guys who can control, set a culture, control the room, instill discipline. He might not be a great X and O guy. I don't know if he is or not. I don't think he has the talent to really show that. But people say, well, why would you want this guy? What did his defense do? That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for a guy who got the respect of the players, who can set the culture for a team. That's who they want as a head coach. That's why John Harbaugh is a good head coach. He wasn't some guru X and O guy, but he came in and set the culture. He set the discipline of that organization and the good head coaches around the league. What happened to Sean McDermott when he was the defensive coordinator here? They ran him out of town because he wasn't Jim Johnson. Well, what a bunch of fools, because that guy could coach. Let this guy get his players before we judge him.
All right, I'll give you that. And hopefully they do. I mean, that's another topic of discussion. How are they going to use the draft picks? We know what the draft picks are going to be now. I mean, 15, 16, and 19. And, do they package one of those picks to try and move up? I couldn't help but watch the Manning cast last night and see one of their guests, Russell Wilson. Is that a possibility? I mean, there's all kinds of things swirling around. And to me, I laugh because I see people literally the season's barely over. And it's like, I saw one that said, Hurts in a second-round pick to the Raiders for Carr. Draft a QB, let him sit for a year, spend every other draft pick on the defense, bring Kelsey back, sign Michael Gallup, cut Rager, cut Whiteside, let Barnett go, sign one defensive stud, any position, a young all-pro. That'll be all. That'll be all.
Yeah.
I mean, geez, do you want any more commandments there? God on your tablet? I mean, like, are you kidding me? That'll be all.
Right. That's
I read
all.
that
That's
and
all
I was
they
like,
do.
whoa.
Well, yeah, the whole here's the thing. And this is the funny part about this whole dynamic between Eagles fans and what they like and what they don't like. Most Eagles fans, I think we can all agree, do not like Howie Roseman. Agree?
I would agree with that.
But the Eagles fans want everything because they're so spoiled because Roseman gets you every call. You're involved in every trade because of Roseman. So you see the dynamic here. You want this guy gone. If you bring in another GM, most of these GMs aren't as aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, do you want a Dave Gettleman, for God's sakes? Do you want to find some other GMs out there that are just completely incompetent?
Right. Well, it goes back to the comment that I made earlier is we always want what's behind door number 2 until we see what's behind door number 2, and then we're ready to knock on the door of door number 3.
And to circle back, aren't the Cowboys like minus 11 million or something like that? Or
they're more than that.
They're heavily over the cap, and the Eagles are under. The Eagles are always under. They always know how to restructure and make the money work.
Yeah, the Cowboys are about 14 million over the cap. Philadelphia is not slightly, they're about 13 million, I would say, under the cap. Last year was the only offseason the Eagles that I can remember were not a player in free agency because of the Carson Wentz situation. You take the Carson Wentz situation out, and they would have been in a normal situation. You put Wentz into that, but I'll give them credit for having the stones to take on that dead money. They repositioned that dead money and still made the playoffs, added a third draft choice, and are now under the cap and have 3 picks. I would say that whoever came up with that dynamic was pretty darn smart.
Yeah, and that would be one Howie Roseman, I believe.
Right. Now this year, we talked to Andrew before. They added a draft class where every single player in the draft class had some sort of contribution this year. Their draft class last year, yes, they have had misses. There is no question that they have had misses. But if you go down every single team, you're going to say, well, they had a miss, they had a miss, they had a miss. The point that I made earlier, Pete Thompson, is there are so few elites at quarterback, coach, GM. That's why they're called the 1%ers. You can't have an elite everything every single year. You can't have the best GM. You can't have the best coach. You can't have the best quarterback. So you have to hope that the guys you have enough around them to elevate you, or the quarterback has the ability to be a 1%er, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, etc., to elevate the guys around them. And that's the hard part about winning in football. There are so few elites at the most important spots, and coach-quarterback dynamic is so big in this game. And quite frankly, it's hard to find an elite head coach, even the really, really, really good ones. Andy Reid is not a good clock management guy. He's a very good X and O guy, and he's a very good culture setter. He's very good at setting the culture of an organization. But when it comes to the last 2.5 minutes of a game, that's not his strong suit.
Right, definitely not. But he sure did have a funny design play there where it was Kelsey threw a touchdown, and that some of the trickery there, that's out of Andy Reid's the mad scientist offensive play calling of Andy Reid.
And the best is, so this is how bad it went for the Cowboys this weekend. They throw a touchdown pass. Now, my boy Joe Valerio is going to be tomorrow night.
Yes.
He was the last number 73 to catch a touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, there you go.
Valerio caught one from Joe Montana, and Allegretti caught one the other night. He caught a touchdown pass, the offensive tackle. But we saw an offensive tackle catch a touchdown pass. We saw a tight end throw a touchdown pass. The Cowboys tried to throw a pass when the receiver caught the ball. He turned around and threw it, and he threw it out. He threw it into the bleachers.
Yeah, I mean, just you can't make this stuff up. I mean, and I look at it like this. You were talking about how hard it is to find a franchise quarterback. That's the next question too, Mike. And did your opinion change at all on Jalen Hurts? I mean, he picked the worst time to have his worst game.
No,
but he is cheap. I mean, that's the thing too.
That's the thing. No, my
opinion
didn't change, and you just brought up the big point, Pete. Seattle won the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson, not because he was the best quarterback in the league. He was very good, but he was a cheap quarterback, and they had the Legion of Boom. They had the best defense in football for like 3 years there. They had Marshawn Lynch. They had great, weapons on offense. So they had a low-priced quarterback, and the team around him was so good that they elevated that team to a Super Bowl. As soon as he made money, what happened to that team? It fell apart.
Yeah,
the Legion of
because you
Boom
gotta
had to
pay
go
him, and you can't pay everybody else.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
number one on why I haven't given up on Hurts. 2, I don't like the quarterbacks in this draft. I don't think there's a guy that is worth drafting. 3, this will be Hurts' first year in an offense for 2 consecutive years. He switched
With the
from
same
Alabama
offensive coordinator
to Oklahoma,
Yep.
from Oklahoma to Doug Peterson, and then to Nick Sirianni. This will be his second year in this offense. I would imagine they're going to get him another weapon. If you watch the All-22, Pete Thompson, Tampa Bay went man-to-man on Rager, and you remember the game. Ricky Manning Jr. threw Todd Pinkston around like a rag doll. Well, Jalen Rager couldn't get 2 yards off the line. He just couldn't get off man coverage.
Yeah.
So when you're going back to pass, one of your options isn't even in the pattern.
Right, because I definitely saw that, and I didn't watch the All-22, but I watched some of the analysis about all Todd Bowles does is play that cover 3, which means why are you trying to run up against an 8-man front when what's always open is that little 7-yard, as Casey Joyner calls it, dink and dunk, on the outside. Well, you can't throw a 7-yard out to Jalen Rager when he's getting thrown down to the ground and getting physically manhandled. So who do you have left? I mean, it was a confluence of bad things. Dallas Goedert had that ball go right through his hands. That's a ball he normally catches. And you're right. I mean, there's no point that Eagles fans hated Howie Roseman more than when Jalen Rager dropped the ball on the punt. That turned the game. That's because they had forced a 3 and out. They had a chance to start establishing something. Look, another slow start again. They had 0 first quarter points in each of Hurts's last 5 starts, and you forget that because Minshew played in the Cowboys game. And but if you go back to the Week 12 loss to the Giants, that's 5 straight starts where they got off to slow starts, and but they still, if he catches that punt.
Oh, I agree, because if you remember at the end of the half, with 50 seconds left, they were driving. They had a chance to put points on the board, and Hurts throws that horrible interception. But at least they had something going with the offense. They get the stop, they force the punt, and then bonehead Rager drops the punt and muffs the punt, and then Tampa Bay goes down. And it's not even that they score, it's the way they score. It's the Gronk in the back, wide open. He gets the mega spike. He gets the place into it. And at that point, you got no shot. So
now settle an argument for me. There's somebody, my girlfriend's son and I went back and forth. I would have liked the Eagles to have taken the football. They did what everybody does, which is win the toss and then defer. But I don't know why you hand the ball to Brady right off the start.
I said that on Sunday on your show there, Pete Thompson. Yeah. I said I would take the ball and set the tone. You let them set the tone of the game, and I thought, not that won or lost you the game.
No, it didn't, but it certainly
I agree
put
with
him behind the 8 ball, and I would have liked to have seen him take the ball. But
all right, that's Pete Thompson. He's brought to you by BMW of Atlantic City, closer than you think online, BMWAtlanticCity.com. All right, Pete, we'll see you on Friday, man.
Yep, talk to you on Friday. Good discussion, bud.
Yeah, really good discussion with the PT there. He is, of course, here on the Tuesday with Thompson. He's back for happy hour Friday when we come back. Rob Monty's in the house. We'll recap this Eagles season. What's next? Plus the divisional round. We get Rob's thoughts on that and all the coaching carousel. I predict, see what Rob Monty thinks. Mike McCarthy will not be the coach of the Cowboys. That's my prediction. We'll see if there's going to be more coaching changes. Will Cliff Kingsbury last? All that and more. Coming up next with NFL writer Rob Monty from the Associated Press here on the Sports Bash. All right, 5:30 Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Rob Motti. He's brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook in partnership with Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City, resortsac.com. Book your next getaway. And for game day specials, Rob Motti is here from the Associated Press as we take a look at this Eagles loss, all the NFL playoffs, what's happened in the coaching world right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles lose. And, Rob, it wasn't all that close. We thought maybe they could give a little bit of a fight, but it wasn't to be. I mean, Tampa just went in there and really exploited a lot of Eagle weaknesses, man.
Yeah, Mike, they look like a team that didn't belong in the playoffs. And I guess I was a homer for picking them to cover. I had Tampa to win, but the Eagles to cover. I had a nice 15-0 playoff streak against the spread till the Eagles killed me in that one, but that's okay. They really didn't look like they belonged in the playoffs at all, and finish off season at 9-9. And I think what we saw is the difference between a playoff team just getting in and those who are championship level contenders, like the defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. And I put this little stat out afterwards. Since the NFL added the 7th seed last year, it's only been 2 years. It's a small sample, but those 7 seeds are 0-4, and they've lost by 60+ points margin of victory. So you could tell there's a huge gap between 2 seed and 7 seed, and the Eagles have a long way to go. But I think the most disturbing part of that game is Jalen Hurts' performance. And I'd been a guy who kind of was high on Jalen at points during the season. Wanted to see them give him an opportunity going into 2022 to be the starting quarterback, to build around him, to use those 3 first-round picks and try and complement Jalen and help that defense. And now I come out of that game going, I'm not so sure anymore, Mike, because I just see such a wide gap between his level of play and, it's hard to compare. You don't want to compare anybody to the GOAT, to Tom Brady, but then you look at the other quarterbacks who can win you games with their arm. And so many times this year when Jalen had that opportunity and you needed him to step up, he couldn't do it. So that's the part to me that's most disconcerting.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring up, and I want to ask you, do we feel that that's more him and his inabilities, or did he lack the weaponry? In other words, do you want to see him with better complement of weapons? I mean, really, Rager was just a complete non-factor. You're throwing to one side of the field if he's out there. So that's the question. Did he miss guys? Did he miss plays? Or were there not a lot of plays to be made?
Yeah, and you know what? That's where they got to really evaluate it. But you have Devontae Smith, who for whatever reason wasn't targeted often enough. And Quez Watkins, or at times there were some. I thought there were at times throws to be made, and there were at times areas where he could have looked and he went in a different direction. And then there was, of course, sometimes you got to have guys making plays for you, There was a nice throw to Dallas Goedert that he flat out dropped for like a 30-yard gain, and that's not on Jalen, that's on Dallas, and I think that's where the hard evaluation comes from. So we're in an era, right, where you got to take a stance, Mike. You got to be a hot taker and say, I want this or I want that. But I'm approaching this offseason, and I'm going, I can understand if the Eagles choose to build around Jalen, give him one more year, maybe do what I suggested and a couple NFL people suggested, maybe they trade for future picks and don't use all the 3 and give him another opportunity. But I can also understand if they say, you know what, we got to upgrade at the quarterback position, and Russell Wilson's available, Deshaun Watson's available. Maybe I don't know how they feel about Kenny Pickett or any of the other quarterbacks in the draft. But if they feel there's an upgrade to be had, and obviously Watson and Wilson are significant upgrades, I can understand them going in that direction. So I can't have a hard stance on this one. I can't say build around Jalen for sure, the way that season ended, and I can't say go out and get a new quarterback. I think all options need to be on the table, and knowing Howie and how this Eagles team thinks and operates, I believe they'll explore all those options, Mike.
Yeah, and I agree. And you're right about the fact that the 7 and the 2 and the disparity, we saw it on both sides. The AFC, you mentioned last year as well. But I do feel it was a good eye-opening experience for them to understand how far they are. Because if you would have just missed the playoffs and you're 9-8 and you're like, we went from 4 to 9 and we just missed. Getting there and getting your butt whipped, I think really puts it into perspective of how the disparity is. And I think that's a good thing.
I agree. I'd rather be the Eagles at 9-8 getting in and getting your butts whipped by the Buccaneers than being the Saints at 9-8 and missing the playoffs. You're like a couple picks apart in the draft. It's not that significant, but now you didn't get that experience. So Nick Sirianni and a young coaching staff got to see what it's like to plan, to prepare, to go out there and coach a playoff game. Jalen Hurts got the opportunity to play in it. Devontae Smith, other young core guys, Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata, they all experienced their first playoff game. That'll never be a bad thing, Mike. I don't think that'll ever be something that you could come out of it and go, wow, I would have. I know Eagles fans say, I would have rather not shown up than get blown out like that. No, I don't feel that way. I think it's a good thing overall for this team. And yeah, I know Jalen and Devontae and Dickerson and other guys played in big games in college. It's one thing to play in big games in college. It's another to play in big games in the NFL. And I'm glad they got that experience. Now they know what it takes, what the difference, what the level is. And I think it is certainly going to make them hungrier, but it should make the front office hungrier too as well, to go out there and make sure you secure the talent, you procure that talent to cut that gap, because the gap is significant.
Rob, a lot of questions now in the offseason. I guess one that we don't know the answer to, but I want to see what you think. You were there on Sunday. I don't know if you got a chance to talk to Jason Kelce, but do we anticipate that he played his last game, or is that not the way he wants to go out? Does he see a team that's, hey, we're on the rise and I got another year left in me? He's been thinking about it for 2 years, I feel like now.
Yeah, it seems maybe even more than that. And we didn't get an opportunity to talk to Jason after the game. I'm not sure. I don't think did he speak yesterday?
I have not found a transcript from him, no.
No, I didn't see him speak, which is somewhat surprising, but I think that's where Jason's at. I don't know that he knows yet, Mike, and I would hope that, he played at an all-pro level this year. He was an all-pro. Now he's 4-time all-pro, which kind of really increases his Hall of Fame candidacy. He had those 2 big holding calls in that game, which were very uncharacteristic of Jason. And maybe he doesn't want to go out that way, but I don't think he can base his decision on one game. I think it's the totality, the body of work of his season, what he did. He's still playing at a high level. If physically and emotionally he's able to go out there and give it one more season, I'm sure the Eagles are going to welcome him back with open arms. You see a young left side of that offensive line that can really benefit from having his leadership there. And whatever direction they go at quarterback, that person's going to benefit from having Jason Kelce under center. But I think this is one where he takes some time with the family. He's a dad now, and he sits back and thinks about it. And it could take several weeks before he decides whether or not he wants to play next year. And I hope that he gives it one more season at least.
Yeah, and I know, Rob, we got a lot of offseason questions. The quarterback will be one, and then they got the 3 picks. But they got to really do something with this defense, you would imagine. But this John Gannon thing puts the defense in limbo, I guess, for a little bit here.
Yeah, and, he interviewed today with the Texans. He's got 2 more interviews. And I look at Jonathan Gannon like this. Based on the product his guys put on the field, his team put on the field, I can't imagine where an owner, a GM, a president, whoever it is in the hiring process from another team would say, I want to choose a defensive-minded head coach, and would take Gannon over Leslie Frazier or Todd Bowles or DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinators who've had more success than Jonathan Gannon. But being a head coach isn't always about the success you had at that coordinator position. Part of it is your leadership ability, how you can rally a group of men to overcome adversity. Who do you have in your pipeline to be assistant coaches with you? How do you interview? So I think all of those are factors. So I think on paper, people are like appalled in some ways. Like, how can Jonathan Gannon get a job over Frazier or Todd Bowles or DeMeco or someone else who's had more success? And I don't know how they interview. I don't know how Gannon interviews, but I do know how Jonathan Gannon conducts himself with the media in our, whether it's Zoom or in person, and he comes across as very assertive, very smart, a strong leader, and I think those are really characteristics of a strong head coach. So at this point last week, Mike, I didn't think he was going to get a head coaching job, and I would still bet against it right now unless he knocks somebody's socks off with the interview. But to me, the fact that he's got 3 interviews means whether you lose him this year or next year, people see him as a future head coach on the rise, and usually guys like that are going to get a job sooner or later.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I literally was talking about this earlier. People, I write the article for the website, and the comments are just blowing up. Like, get this guy out of here. See you later. And I said the reaction to Gannon getting head coaching interviews are great. I'm not saying he was great, but the same people are going to complain that they didn't have enough talent on defense. And you just said it. Sometimes being a head coach isn't about you as the coordinator and your X's and O. It's what kind of culture are you going to set in our organization, in our locker room? So teams might look at Gannon and say, I don't know that you did a great job as a coordinator, but we really like the way you led that team. You didn't have a lot of talent. They fought hard. They played for you. You didn't fight. That's what I think people miss a lot of times. Look at a Harbaugh. Look at, Brian Flores, who I thought did a great job in Miami. These guys aren't X's and O gurus. They set cultures, and that's what head coaches are more than they are X and O guys. Guess what? If the Dallas Cowboys had a culture setter, they'd be playing this week.
And their demise this week was laughable the way that happened. I did have the Niners winning outright, so yay for me. I picked finally
same
special. Yeah, right. But you're right, and that's why sometimes I think the outrage is I don't want to call it fall outrage about guys getting interviews, but I think it's misguided outrage because Jonathan Gannon could be it's about that binder, Mike. Andy Reid, remember Andy Reid came in prepared for his interview with that big, thick binder, and that's what impresses the owners. Now you don't necessarily have to have a binder. I'm talking about what are you bringing to the table? What culture are you going to set? Who are going to be your coordinators? Who are going to be your guys, your assistants? And I think that certainly goes a long way with NFL owners, and we'll see how that plays out. But from the standpoint, if the Eagles lose him, that's going to be a hole. That's going to be a void that they're going to have to fill because now it's going to be someone else calling those plays next year, and there's going to be an adjustment period there. And they more than likely, I think, they may promote from within.
Rob Motti, real quick, we got the divisional games. We'll get into a little deeper on Thursday. You think McCarthy makes it?
You know what? The way that season ended, it would not surprise me at all if Jerry Jones pulls the plug on Mike McCarthy because that was on the coaching staff. That was solely on the preparation. You can't have that team in that position not understand what they got to do at the end. In some ways, Mike McCarthy's job would have been safer had they not even got the ball back and had an opportunity. I think then they would have they lost the game and they didn't bungle it the way they did. But it's laughable. Everybody who's played the quarterback position realizes and understands the guy you got to give the ball to the ref to spot it there. And to not have those guys prepared in that moment, that's got to fall on the head coach. They underperformed. They came up small. This is a team that had the talent to win, had the talent to go deeper into the playoffs, and they fell short. And the thing is, Mike, they have a replacement right there in-house if they wanted to go with Dan Quinn, and that would make sense. It'd be an easy fix for the Cowboys.
It's funny because I think Quinn will end up getting a job, and then that team will be disappointed because, as I said, guess what? Michael Parsons doesn't come with them.
That's a great point. Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, some of those guys, but Parsons, I've loved him all season long. Trayvon Diggs, you're not getting all these guys with you wherever you go. You're more than likely going to go to a team where that's going to need some help.
Rob Motti from the Associated Press here. We got divisional matchups we'll look at on Thursday when he's back. And, of course, you can check out Faith on the Field Saturday morning at 9 here on 97.3 ESPN. And we will talk more about these playoff matchups when he returns on Thursday's show. All right, Rob, take care, bud.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, buddy.
There's Rob Motti from the Associated Press right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. And Rob Motti is brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook in partnership with Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. Visit resortsac.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. Get you ready for game night tonight. Kevin Durso will be a part of game night at 6:20. Flyers right back on the ice against the Islanders, looking to snap an 8-game losing streak. We got more Sports Bash on the way. Stick around. All right, Sports Bass Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill, getting you ready for game night tonight. Kevin Durso, Flyers at 7, right here on 97.3 ESPN in the free mobile app. You can listen to Flyers games on your phone. Download the app. Sixers tomorrow, Flyers Thursday, Sixers Friday this weekend. Flyers at Buffalo, a 1 o'clock start, followed by the NFL Divisional Playoff. Sunday, we'll have all the NFL Divisional Playoff action here on 97.3 ESPN. I saw a couple of, Twitter's relentless with the NFL playoff round, wild card ending. Sure. I've seen some good ones, Josh, as we get ready to wrap up a Tuesday night here. I think the one that I just saw, Kyler Murray, remember Kyler Murray got drafted in the first round by the A's in the baseball draft. Somebody tweeted, Kyler Murray fits the A's organization because he also likes to play just one round in the playoffs. It's pretty good, right?
These people are just they're hitting send real quick.
All day. The Cowboy stuff is just everywhere. And look, they bring it on themselves.
They're an easy target.
They're so sensitive. Like, God almighty. I have never
one of my favorites I saw was the picture of the guy with the girl was crying.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the one is a meme that says, "It's okay, honey. We still have Duke basketball and Yankee seasons around the corner."
I've seen those everywhere. They are my favorite ones. Is don't worry, Cowboy fans. Yankee spring training starts in a couple of weeks. Duke basketball has a game this weekend. LeBron's got the Lakers.
That was the other one they mentioned, the Lakers.
Yeah. Notre Dame football will get to a bowl game again next year.
We still have Marcus
those
Freeman.
are my favorite. And it's almost like the Cowboy fans aren't really smart enough to understand that that's how they're perceived. And if you'll ask them, well, what's your favorite baseball team? Well, I like the Yankees. Well, who's your favorite football team? Well, I like the Cowboys. But I'm not one of those people. Wait a second. What do you mean you're not one of those people? You like the Yankees and you like Dallas. Now, you try to explain to me logically here how you ass backward yourself into liking a team from New York City and another team from Dallas, Texas. What's the connection here for me, pal? How did you end up liking? And then it's like, well, my friend, no.
It's the power of marketing. You were talking about it earlier.
Right, exactly.
On
the Cowboy front, Dak Prescott, Tony Romo, both 1-3 in the playoffs, their first 6 seasons as a starter. That one has been going around a while today as well. You got the one with the Doritos, and it says Nacho Year. Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
That one's out there. The circle of Dallas fans. It's like season starts. I don't remember the whole thing, but
one of my favorites is because Aikman basically said on the air that he wanted to do the Cowboys game instead of the Bucs game.
Yeah, well, I think he was taking a shot at the fact that they didn't get to do that game.
Well, taking a shot at them, right? So somebody put online that basically, would the Cowboys have won the game if Aikman was calling it instead of Romo?
That's pretty funny.
Because Aikman's
Aikman's won and Romo's been a loser.
Right.
Romo, who I like. I'm not ripping Romo.
I like Romo too. But
he couldn't have been cheering any harder for
my
Dallas.
Gosh, it was disturbing. I kept having to switch over to Nickelodeon because I couldn't stand it at times.
He was brutal but I gotta be fair to Romo. Even as much as he was pulling for them to win that game, he was keeping it real with the penalty calls. He was legit saying, look,
he ripped them for the Randy Gregory one.
He said, these are all legitimate calls. Like, I can't argue with it. And then he'd be like, oh, he was pulling for them to win that game.
Mike, I got to tell you, that Noah Eagle and Nate Burleson on the Nickelodeon cast was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw some of the highlights of the green slime. And how about the little kid who interviewed Deebo Samuel after the game? Did you see him?
Yes.
Jeez.
That kid was actually the reason why I kept going back to Romo.
By the way, Drew Brees, maybe you should get back onto the field because the broadcast booth you didn't do such a good job.
Oh my gosh, that was not.
He had a rough night at the office.
To say the least.
All right, I'm back tomorrow. Joe Valerio will have a great story. He's going to tell a great story about the whole touchdown in Kansas City. Game night's up next. Stick around.